He spent his entire life losing. No matter how hard he tried, he was never number one. After dying on the final stage of his favorite game, he wakes up inside its world and chooses the class everyone calls completely useless, Crafter. Now he's building drones, firearms, machines, and weapons this world has never seen before. One invention after another. The impossible slowly becomes reality. Can the weakest class become the one that changes the entire world? The VR online game with the largest number of players in the world is Zero Fantasy Online, short name ZFO. In this game, MC was about to become the first in the world to reach the maximum level of 999. As expected, 200 hours straight without a break was too much. He wanted to eat and sleep when it was over. He just wanted to achieve something. He wanted to perfect at least one thing and become someone whose name would go down in history. However, be it studies or sports, he was never able to become number one. But even so, if this is ZFO, he could become first in the world. Or so it was meant to be. When he attacked the monster, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. His vision began to blur. He did not care about his condition at all. He only thought about how close he was to his victory. And so, right before the last level, he died, both in the game and in life. But this is not the end of his story, but only the beginning. He opened his eyes, saw tree foliage above him, and just as he was wondering where he was, a farmer's indignant cry came from the side. Right now, goblins were rampaging through the field, trampling watermelons and other crops, and the farmers were trying to drive them away. MC stood up and looked around. One of the farmers attacked a goblin with a hoe, but it simply broke. A level 7 fire goblin turned to him with displeasure, asking what the hell he was doing. The poor level 1 farmer screamed in fear and took off running. MC stretched his arm. He felt his body very well, just like in real life. Now he realized that he had been reborn in the game world. For him, this wasn't even something surprising. He immediately opened the status window. Here, his name was Alan. He hadn't chosen a class yet. He noted that it was a nice name, but he was only level 1. He was so close to becoming the world's first max level player. And again, he couldn't reach the top. One of the farmers called him an adventurer and asked him to hurry and save them. Alan chuckled. An NPC villager, since they recognized him as an adventurer and asked for help. That meant, just like in the game's main story, this world also had a plot where adventurers fought the Demon Lord's army. He asked the farmer to wait a second so he could choose a class first, and the old man exclaimed in surprise. Was he only level 1? The guy exclaimed that at level 1, he was no different from them. He couldn't defeat a fire goblin, and they were right. At level 1, he couldn't defeat the monster. So what should he do? The enemy was level 7, hard to defeat with a normal class. But he had an idea. Artisan is a strange class that can only use the item creation skill. In the game, it's considered the worst trashy class. But in this situation, where the plot had become reality with its current capabilities, he should be able to use this artisan's ability. He chose this class. Basic equipment immediately appeared on him, and he used the creation skill. An assault rifle appeared from a small magic cube. This weapon has automatic reloading, but when the magazine is empty, attacking is temporarily impossible. He smirked at his success. The ability to create items, if you accurately understand their structure, also works with the items he had before rebirth. To think that the greatest mind in the world actually came in handy. If he can understand the structure, he can even recreate a fighter jet. The NPCs were shocked. They had never seen such a weapon before, but they were even more perplexed by the fact that he became an artisan. That's the worst class. MC chuckled. It seemed that in this world, artisans were also considered trash, but he would prove them wrong. He pulled the trigger and opened fire. The farmers were frightened by the loud sound, and when they saw something pierce the goblins' bodies several times at high speed, they were shocked. In this world where only medieval technology exists, Alan can bring as many modern things as he wants. For him, the artisan is a god to your class. The NPCs were shocked. Right before their eyes, a level 1 adventurer instantly killed a level 7 goblin. What the hell was that? MC decided to give them weapons so they could destroy monsters themselves. They clumsily picked up the rifles and asked in confusion, would he really give them such a powerful weapon? He answered them that as a craftsman, he could create as much as he wanted, and they thanked him. But the young farmer was worried about something. What if they hit an ally? Alan told him not to worry. He had imposed restrictions so that the rifles wouldn't damage anything except monsters. He shot at him to prove it, and he was terrified. The bullets merely slammed into him and crumpled as if they had hit something impenetrable. Now that they were sure the weapon was completely safe, they confidently opened fire on the goblins. MC could simply stand aside and not participate. His level had risen to level 2, which surprised him slightly. He hadn't thought leveling up would be so fast just by supplying farmers with weapons. Crafted weapons can be passed on to others, and if monsters are killed with these weapons, part of the experience is returned to the creator. That is, him. After finishing with the goblins, the old man approached him and thanked him for his help, giving him a fire goblin magic stone as thanks. These stones contain the power of monsters, and adventurers earn money by exchanging them for money in the guild. The guild extracts magical power from them and converts it into universal energy. Suddenly, a loud scream was heard. The goblin boss had arrived. The NPCs scattered in panic, and Alan immediately realized that the enemy was serious and that he was level 13. He was much stronger than ordinary monsters. The two immediately opened fire on him, thinking they would easily deal with him, but it was not to be. He was able to defend himself with his steel shield. After that, the goblin laughed at them. He was not in pain, and it did not even itch. Their attacks did not work. Because of this, the farmers were confused, and MC thought, "This is bad. With his current level, it is difficult to create weapons capable of defeating him." The goblin went on the attack. The two immediately started running, and the guy warned Alan that he also needed to leave, otherwise he would be killed. But MC was not going to. He looked at the magic stone in his hand and thought that the crafting skill can be used to repair items. In that case, can't he use things as materials? He took 2 rifles, combined them with the magic stone, and he got a rocket launcher with very high damage. It seems that using the magic stone has a special effect. He even reduced the magazine to 1 shot to increase the power. Plus, the effect of the magic stone was added. He took aim and fired. The rocket hit the monster's head. He clearly didn't expect it and didn't have time to dodge. Then, there was a powerful explosion, and Alan's level immediately rose to 4th. He single-handedly defeated a higher-level boss, which is quite an achievement. Such a large monster left behind a correspondingly sized stone. All the farmers were shocked. He even killed the boss with 1 shot. Shouldn't crafted weapons be weaker than regular ones? MC put away the rocket launcher and thought, weapons crafted using magic stones break after depleting their magic power. A regular creation and a creation with magic stones. He needs to consider when to use each. The farmers, perplexed, asked why he was so strong. Is he from a famous clan of adventurers? He told them that he wasn't. As far as they could see, he was just a newbie. And so, a unique craftsman was born into this world, the only one capable of ending the long war with the Demon Lord's army. But he himself doesn't realize it yet. He picked up a magic stone and already had a rough understanding of the artisan mechanics. With these stones, he could effectively level up. This time, he'd definitely be the first in the world to reach level 999. Time passed, and he'd already reached level 13. And right now, he was facing a huge stone golem. He'd gone into the forest to test his skill, but he didn't expect to encounter something of such a scale. This monster was level 20, but rifle bullets had no effect on it, only leaving small indentations in its stone body that quickly disappeared. In addition to its overwhelming defense, this golem also had the ability to regenerate. Alan thought he'd maximized his assault rifle's attack, but physical attacks were still ineffective. He decided to try another module, and using the skill, added a slot to the assault rifle. Now, if he inserted a magic stone into the slot, he could further increase its power. He pulled a recently acquired golem magic stone from his inventory, and inserted it into the assault rifle, causing it to immediately glow brightly. The rifle's barrel began to transform into something resembling a shotgun. The magic stone imbued the bullets with a piercing effect, an effect that ignored physical defense. As soon as he finished with the rifle, the stone golem raised its hands to hit him, and then he aimed the gun at it and ran to the side, simultaneously firing several shots. The stone golem immediately covered its head for protection, but didn't expect that this time, the bullets would pierce its armor, and then it exploded. After killing the monster, MC gained level 14, and at the same time, successfully conducted the experiment. The magic stone broke, and he thought, if the modification only breaks this part, if the weapon itself broke, it would be problematic. But it's good that it doesn't. He picked up a new magic stone, and his level increased again, but this time, because the villagers repelled the orc attack using the weapon he created. Those villagers make good use of his rifles. Since then, he went around several villages and handed out a weapon to each one. Thanks to this, he receives experience from the whole world without even fighting. This is what's called passive income. He helps villagers stay safe, and he levels up at the same time. Choosing the artisan class was the right decision. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild headquarters. They were quite puzzled by his incredibly fast leveling. Everyone was very surprised that he went from level 4 to level 15 in just 4 days. That's an impossible speed. All the guild workers rushed to look at his profile. His name was unfamiliar to them, and the fact that his class was artisan surprised them even more. It was impossible for such a trashy class to level up so quickly. One of the guild workers told his colleagues that he had ordered his familiar to record his last battle. It would now transfer the image to a magic crystal. Seeing how deftly he dealt with the stone golem, they were greatly surprised, and the weapon in his hands greatly puzzled them. They had never seen anything like it before. He so easily dealt with a stone golem with absolute defense. His firepower was on a completely different level. A guild worker said that although he was only level 15, his firepower was at least 50. His colleagues were very surprised, because the weapon he created should be weaker than usual, to which he replied, he doesn't understand how it works. But in any case, this person is beyond all bounds. They need to inform the master about this. Perhaps the one they were looking for has finally appeared. The familiar began transmitting a live image while Alan began a fight with another boss, and the guild workers sat down to watch. MC encountered a huge level 27 sandworm. This monster is the boss. The monster roared loudly, and Alan thought, the sandworm has low defense, but a huge amount of health. This monster is perfect for testing the limits of the weapon he created. The rocket launcher is powerful, but it only has one shot. He is interested in how much he can strengthen a weak weapon through modification using the golem's magic stone. He decided to give it a try, and created a pistol with high damage. The weapon also had an additional effect, increasing attack power by 55%. Merging with a magic stone provided an excellent option, and it would also add another effect from the slot. As soon as he inserted the stone into the slot, the pistol changed its appearance, and acquired a freezing effect. He was glad that he had succeeded. Even if it didn't kill the monster in one shot, it would simply freeze. With such a huge body, it definitely wouldn't miss. The monster rushed to attack, fired immediately, and as soon as the bullet pierced the worm's body, a terrible cold began to spread, holding the monster in place. The huge worm no longer moved. MC struck the ice several times, causing the monster's body to immediately crumble into many pieces. Even a pistol, which is inferior in power to a rocket launcher, can kill a boss in one shot. As expected, an artisan is a divine tier class. Having obtained another magic crystal, he decided to return to the city and exchange the loot for money. He came to the Adventurers Guild and put a bunch of magic stones on the counter, which made the girl a little confused. She asked him to state his name, and as soon as he said it, she was surprised and asked him to wait a bit, and then ran off somewhere. Alan didn't suspect anything, and began to wait for her. Then he heard the loud clanking of armor and footsteps. Guards surrounded him from all sides, and said that he was under suspicion. He wondered what they were even talking about, and then they threw chains on him, and the guard said, from now on, he will be taken to the guild headquarters. MC didn't like this at all. As soon as they arrived at the headquarters, he was brought to the meeting room, where the leadership had already gathered. The man ordered the guards to let him go, and asked, his name is Alan, right? He was sorry that they scared him. They were curious because he was leveling up so quickly, and that's why he wanted to talk to him at all costs. MC flexed his wrists, which were under the pressure of the chains, and asked what they wanted from him. The guy excitedly jumped up from his chair, and asked him to tell them more about his weapon, a pistol. He answered them that even if he told them, they still wouldn't understand anything, because it was technology that didn't exist in this world. The other guy chuckled, and noted that he thought too much of himself for a simple artisan. Isn't his weapon just a trinket? Alan understood everything. He was trying to provoke him into revealing information, in which case, he would give them the same as the farmers. He created a rifle. It fell right in front of that guy, and he said that they could study it as much as they wanted. Upon seeing the stats of this weapon, everyone was very surprised. The attack power is 50, a level comparable to a knight of the same level, and he shoots it 30 times in a row. It's simply impossible. The MC turned to leave, and asked, are they finished? He aims to become the first in the world with level 999. He doesn't want to waste time, so he's leaving. The man got nervous and stopped him. If he's aiming for level 999, does that mean his ultimate goal is to defeat the Demon King? He told him that most likely it will be so, and it's to his advantage. He heard from the elders in the village that the situation of the Demon Lord's army is bad. The man confirmed this. Humanity is experiencing an unprecedented crisis because of his army. A major city recently fell. Alan said that he will solve these problems over time. In any case, next time they should invite him normally. He was about to leave, but the man stopped him again, and said that he had one more question. The MC asked him discontentedly what he wanted, and he nervously said, If he wants to level up effectively, then he should join a clan. It's an adventurer organization. He could get him into an A-rank clan right now. His colleague immediately stopped him, telling him not to try to take him for himself, and told Alan that if he was going to recommend him, his clan was better. He was also an A-rank, an elite, and they actively went into high-level dungeons. They ended up arguing, trying to lure Alan into joining their clan, but he stopped them and said he wasn't going to join anyone. He wanted to act freely. The man, slightly confused, adjusted his glasses and asked him to let them know if he changed his mind, after which he left. One of them remarked that he was a rather strange guy, and glanced at the assault rifle, asking how it worked. His colleague replied that he didn't know. It was clearly not something a level 15 craftsman could create. The guy suggested that his colleagues gather the best blacksmiths and craftsmen in the country, so they could study everything in detail. Time passed, and many adventurers gathered in front of the entrance to a dungeon called the Wolf Mine, including MC. Even in this world, Instant Dungeon is always crowded. These are dungeons created separately for each group, allowing adventurers to avoid competing for monsters with other parties. The guy waved at Alan, inviting him to join the group, but upon seeing his level 15, he was very surprised and ran away, telling him to forget his offer. It was all because the recommended level for this dungeon is 25. And he was only 15. MC smirked. He wouldn't have come to such a hole if not for the level difference modifier. In this world, there are level difference modifiers. The higher the enemy's level relative to yours, the more experience you get. It is considered most effective to fight enemies 10 levels higher. A loud scream distracted him from his thoughts. A group of guys surrounded the poor girl, luring her into their group. Her name is Emma, a level 20 priest, and this nasty guy is Lucas, a level 65 swordsman. The other adventurers began whispering about the situation. Judging by their conversations, he often appears to girls and then does something to them in dungeons. He attacks with a sword without hesitation, and he is a high level, so they can't help her. Licking his lips, Lucas began to approach Emma, and then she pushed him away and asked him to stop. She just wants to be in a group with people her level. She doesn't want to parasitize on others. He shrugged and told her to just parasitize on them. It's easier to level up that way. Besides, they'll really enjoy it too. Their nasty grin said nothing else. Something appeared behind Lucas's back. 2 hands with outstretched index fingers that dug straight into his butt. Feeling this push, Lucas fell in pain and grabbed the injured area, and his friends were simply shocked that a bronze hand suddenly grew out of the ground. MC approached him and apologized. He just had trouble controlling himself. His skill was malfunctioning. Lucas's face winced in pain. He threatened him with his fist and said that he would kill him. Does he even know who he is? Alan asked him to calm down. He was just testing if he could create things from a distance, and then he caught his eye. Lucas, furious, called him an idiot. He drew his sword and ordered him to stop talking nonsense. He was not to be trifled with. Seeing that he was only level 15, he was very surprised, and his friends laughed and asked how he dared to attack him. They told Lucas to stop mocking the weak, and he put the blade back in its sheath with a displeased look, saying that if he killed him, he would only make a laughing stock of himself. This time, he would make an exception and let him live. MC thanked him and left, and Emma followed him and said that he really did save her. He told her that he didn't save her, and Lucas called out to them. Actually, the conversation wasn't over yet. He said that he wouldn't kill him, but he didn't say that he would let him go. Alan turned to him, asking what he wanted from him, and he, pointing to the entrance to the dungeon, told him that they would have a competition to see who could clear it the fastest. If he won, he would crush his face into meat. Emma stood up for him, saying it wasn't fair. Alan was only level 15. Lucas licked his lips, saying he'd take her body as a reward for winning, and this immediately brought tears to her eyes. Surprisingly, Alan agreed. He wanted to name his terms, but changed his mind, saying he didn't care. He didn't need any reward. Lucas smirked, noting that it was because he had no chance of winning. MC scratched his head and smirked. Actually, even if he won against a piece of trash like him, the reward would still be pathetic, wouldn't it? These words really angered the guy, and he said, now he realizes he's an arrogant idiot who simply doesn't know his place. Before entering the dungeon, Emma warned Alan that it was dangerous here. He's only level 15, and it's recommended to only come here from level 25. He confidently answered her that it wasn't a problem. He'd planned to hunt here from the start. He confidently walked to the entrance, and Lucas mockingly asked, is he really going to go alone? Why not form a group? There are plenty of weaklings here who would suit him. MC asked, so he's going in a group? At level 65, he can't do anything without his pack. Lucas got angry, and Alan waved his hand, telling him to do whatever he wants. He doesn't care, even if they all go in a crowd. Emma excitedly asked him to wait, and she volunteered to go with him and sent him an invite to the group. He froze for a second, then declined the invitation, saying he didn't need her. She didn't expect that, and ran after him, begging him to let her come with him. Because of her clumsiness, she almost fell right in front of him, but then said with confidence she was also to blame for how everything turned out, and she couldn't let him go alone. She invited him to the group. He refused, and then she invited him again. He frowned. This girl was quite stubborn, realizing that she would continue inviting him to the group. He agreed, which made her very happy. Lucas finally said that he didn't care about him, but they couldn't let Emma die. They were still going to have fun with her. The girl grimaced, and MC silently approached the entrance and waved his hand in front of the screen, glancing at the best time of the passage. 19 minutes, 12 seconds. With current capabilities, it will be easy. They entered the dungeon and immediately encountered a horde of undead, caterpillars, and bats. Emma immediately noticed how many of them there were, and the levels were too high. There are only 2 of them. They won't even reach the boss. It will be difficult for them to just break through them. But Alan said that it will be easy. There are many of them, but in the end, they are all weaklings. Another thing is important. Her staff is in the way. Let her put it in her inventory. She looked at him in bewilderment, and he said, since she is in the group, she will also fight. He used his skill and created a submachine gun, one for each of her hands. She was very surprised and exclaimed, "What kind of weapon is this? This one has insane stats." He told her that it is called a firearm. In this world, only he can create them, and using it is simple. You just need to point the gun at the enemy and pull the trigger. He demonstrated it to her, opened fire, and many bullets pierced all the monsters. Emma simply froze in place from delight and surprise, watching him, and then he told her to fight too. She followed his example and opened fire. Of course, she couldn't hit the monsters right away because of the recoil, and that made her very upset, and her hands started shaking. He said that he made the recoil so strong on purpose. There are a lot of enemies in this dungeon, so she'll hit them even shooting randomly. Now stop chatting. They'll go straight to the boss. Meanwhile, Lucas's group was advancing slowly. They cleared one room, and the guy told Lucas that he was quite brutal. He asked what he was talking about, and he told him not to pretend. This dungeon is designed so that on the first run, there's always a boss. Did he provoke him on purpose? Lucas laughed. That really was his plan. This newbie was just wasting their time, and he won't even reach the boss. Even if he miraculously reached him, he'd just die. The guy noted that their leader was simply merciless, and Lucas smirked and thought he'd disgraced him. It's a shame he can't kill him with his own hands, but he'll definitely regret it. Time passed, and finally Alan and Emma reached the very depths of the dungeon. She noted that less than 10 minutes had passed, only 8, so they got here very quickly. MC disagreed with her. She was completely beaten up, and he looked clean, all because she ran ahead and activated the traps. If it weren't for her, they would have gone twice as fast. She was very upset and apologized to him. This was her first time in a dungeon, but he didn't hold it against her. In this dungeon, he gained 3 levels, and Emma only 1. There is compensation for the level difference, but it seems the experience from the villagers is still great. Emma jumped happily and raised her gun, saying that if he stood there, he would lose the time trial. They needed to hurry and kill the boss. He sighed heavily and asked, "Whose fault is that?" They opened the doors. Alan immediately determined to finish this fight quickly, and as soon as they entered the boss room, a powerful stream of wind mixed with energy hit them. There were 2 monsters, the werewolf queen and king, both level 25. The girl was very surprised that there were 2 of them, and MC only now remembered that there was an additional boss for the first playthrough. She exclaimed indignantly that if he knew about this, he could have said so earlier, and at that moment, the fight began. The king and queen rushed to attack. They prepared their pistols, and Alan thought, werewolves are fast and have high evasion. They dodge even aimed shots, so they are the worst opponent for firearms. He told Emma to give them covering fire, and she pulled the trigger. The werewolves deftly dodged the machine gun fire, and she began to get nervous because she wasn't hitting them. The werewolves decided to split up, which was a bit of a problem. So MC ran ahead and told the girl that she would take on the queen, and he would take care of the king. She nervously exclaimed that she wouldn't succeed, that she couldn't even hit them. She aimed her gun at the queen, but she dodged all of her bullets, and she became very nervous. The queen stopped abruptly in front of her. The girl screamed loudly, and Alan smirked. Emma opened fire on the monster, and MC used his skill. In fact, He was waiting for the right moment to create a trap right under them. The trap slammed shut on their paws. Emma confusedly noticed that they had stopped, and Alan smirked and asked, "Didn't he say that she only needed to buy him time?" While the monsters were trying to escape the trap, Emma said it was simply incredible. She hadn't known artisan skills could be used like that. He remembered that incident with the bronze hand and Lucas. It was good that he had tested the ranged casting beforehand. He approached the king, pulled out a pistol, and said that the werewolf, who couldn't dodge because his legs were tied, had become just an ordinary mob. The king became nervous, dug his claws into the stone floor, trying to escape, and then MC pointed the pistol at him and said goodbye. Alan picked up the crystal that had fallen from the monster's body, and a sound came from the side. Emma had also killed the queen. That's how the two of them cleared the wolf mine. Their time was 9 minutes, 48 seconds, a new record. Emma was very happy about this, and MC said that tomorrow he would complete this dungeon alone and set a new record. She was upset because he essentially called her a burden, and they went to the portal to return to the entrance. When they exited the dungeon, Emma wanted to give him the weapon back, but he told her to keep it. One of the adventurers asked, "Isn't this the guy who argued with Lucas?" Only 10 minutes had passed. Did they give up and leave? His friend noted that this was a reasonable decision. They probably ran away while Lucas wasn't looking. Alan overheard their conversation and asked what they were talking about. They had already completed the dungeon. Of course they didn't believe him, and then he told them to just check the record crystal. Their names were there. They set a new record. The adventurer was indignant because this wasn't even funny, and then his friend approached the crystal and mockingly said that they weren't even suitable for this dungeon's level. And what about the craftsman setting a record? This simply can't be. But when he touched the crystal and saw the new record, he was very surprised. Hearing his surprised exclamation, everyone else crowded around the stone and asked how this was possible, and MC, having created several pistols, answered them that it was all about this weapon. Of course, everyone was confused and surprised. None of them had seen anything like this before, and when they learned that this miracle weapon had a whopping 153 attack points, they were shocked. That was a lot. Emma, with a proud smile, told them that it was very easy to use. You just need to point the weapon at the enemy and pull the trigger. She demonstrated it to them, and the recoil made her hands rise, and she almost shot those guys. One of them wanted to ask who Alan even was and turned to him, but he was no longer there. He had already managed to leave. The adventurers pounced on the two, asking them to show them the weapon, and MC thought that wasting time here was pointless. It was time for him to go. He didn't know it, but an adventurer named Melissa was really interested in him. After some time, Lucas and his team finally came out. They finished in almost 50 minutes, and they were sure that they had won the time trial. They sat down at the entrance to wait for those self-confident newbies, and one of them said, "If they don't come out in an hour, they will go home." His friend agreed with him and laughed. "They are already dead anyway." The adventurer approached Lucas and said with a smirk that their opponents were actually already gone. He frowned and asked displeasably, "Did they escape?" His friends laughed and asked, "Does that mean all their words were empty chatter?" But he said that they didn't escape. They completed the dungeon. Lucas didn't believe him and asked, "Does he mean to say that those two completed the dungeon faster than them?" "That's just nonsense." To this, the guy replied, "They weren't just faster than them. They completed this dungeon faster than anyone else in this world." Lucas was starting to get annoyed. He went to the crystal and angrily slapped it with his hand, exclaiming that he couldn't believe it. But when he saw the new record and the names Alan and Emma underneath it, he couldn't believe his eyes at first. They completed the dungeon, which had taken them almost an hour in 9 minutes. He sat down. His friend noticed that something was wrong with him and approached him, wondering what was going on. He whispered in shock that it was impossible. It was just a lie. He spread his arms out to the sides and cried out in tears that he couldn't lose. Soon, word of this incident reached high circles. After reviewing Alan's dossier, the man noticed that he was indeed a serious opponent. There was a knock at the door. He allowed the man to enter, and an assassin appeared on the threshold, saying he said he had a favor to ask of him. The man confirmed this, showing him a photo of Alan, and he noted with puzzlement that it wouldn't be easy with him. The man threw a large bag of coins on the table and said that he would pay him handsomely and let him kill this guy. Fearing Lucas's revenge, Emma decided to temporarily change her location and walked with Alan to the nearest town. But it was time to say goodbye. She bowed, thanking him for everything, and he asked if she really had to leave. If she needed to, he could drive him away. She exclaimed that this was impossible. She was an adventurer, 2. She couldn't rely on him forever. He decided not to argue with her and told her to take care of herself, and she joyfully jumped up, asking him not to change the wolf mine record. She wanted her name to go down in history. He answered with a smile that he would take her request into account, and she joyfully waved her hands, inviting him to gather the group again when they met. Their paths diverged, and a few days later, MC came to a place to test his skill. He found a remote wasteland, the perfect place. He used the creation skill and prayed for it to work, since his future effectiveness depended on it. Thank God he succeeded. He created a huge tank. On the outside, everything was perfect, but he had doubts about the controls, so he climbed inside. Luckily, the tank's insides were also perfectly reproduced, and he decided to test it in action. He told the tank to move forward, but it didn't react. It seems it doesn't work without fuel, after all. In principle, if he understands the structure, he can create anything through creation. But there are exceptions, formless things like water, electricity, and gasoline. However, this was also expected, but he had already come up with a countermeasure. In the world of ZFO, magic stones are converted into universal energy and used, which means the things he created should also run on magic stones. He inserted the magic stone into the slot, and the tank immediately moved forward. He was already happy that he had succeeded, but after a few meters, the tank stopped, and the stone shattered. He asked disappointedly, did this tank use up all its magic power in an instant? He decided not to try his luck or waste resources any longer and climbed out of the tank. Right now, he simply doesn't have enough power to operate it. To use the tank, he needs higher quality magic stones. And yet, now he knows that they can be used as a power source. But the experiments weren't over. This time, he decided to try creating something smaller, and he ended up with a voice control drone. He inserted a magic stone into the drone, lifted it into the sky, and decided to see how long it would last. He ordered the drone to gain altitude and record a video of the surroundings. After waiting a few seconds, he thought with a smile, the level is acceptable, and if he installs a weapon instead of a camera, it can probably be used in combat. The drone finished recording. He created a tablet and connected them with a cable to see what he had created. The video turned out better than he thought, and then he noticed something in one of the frames. He immediately paused it. It showed people hiding behind a rock, apparently watching him. He frowned and wondered if they were related to those idiots he'd fought with at the wolf mine. If so, then their bloodlust was pretty high. In any case, he didn't like being watched, so he decided to go and ask them directly what they wanted. But first, he crafted a weapon for himself. It turned out to be a group of assassins. One of them peeked out from cover and informed the others that the target had started moving and was approaching them. One of them asked if he'd really noticed them. His colleague told him that he definitely couldn't have seen them since they were level 65 assassins. The guy agreed with him. With the effects of their passive skills, low-level adventurers shouldn't even sense their presence. Alan called out to them and told the 5 of them to stop playing hide and seek, and then they realized he had noticed them and even knew their number. One of them turned to the boss, wondering what they would do, and he answered. He wanted to eliminate him quietly, but since they were noticed, there was no choice. Let them engage. The assassin asked doubtfully, was this the weapon he was using? A pistol, or whatever it was called. Is it possible to attack faster than that? His boss told him that this would be no problem. The weapon does not deal damage to people. He concluded this based on shooting at the farmers. The guy said that everything would be easy then, but besides, he heard that he was only about level 20. His boss called him an idiot and reminded him that he was the target of an assassination, despite being about level 20, so let them be wary. MC again told him to come out. He's not a fan of hide and seek. The assassin leader came out of hiding and noted that he had exposed them. They were just scared. Finally, all 5 of them showed up in Alan's sight. He cautiously asked what their goal was, and the assassin told him not to look at them like that. They just came to get rid of him. After that, they disappeared into the fog, and MC looked around. 5 of them had stealth skills, and they were all quite high level. It was good that he chose a weapon suitable for rapid fire. The assassin called him a fool. This weapon wouldn't leave even a scratch, but Alan dashed his expectations by firing a couple of shots. One of them hit him in the ear and tore his hood. The other bullets had already touched his comrades. MC shot them all, leaving only the leader alive. He said that if they were going to attack a guy with a gun, they should have come up with a better plan. He pointed the gun at him, and he asked in surprise, why did that happen? His gun shouldn't hurt people. Now Alan understood everything. That's why they rushed straight at him. Usually he sets a limit so that accidental shots don't harm people, but they looked suspicious from the start. He shot him in the legs and added, therefore the limitation is lifted for this weapon. Naturally, If the bullet hits, they will die. The assassin fell to his knees and clicked his tongue in annoyance, and MC brought the gun to his forehead and asked why they aimed at him. Let him talk if he doesn't want to die. He reminded him that they are actually assassins. They kill anyone if there is an order. Alan asked who their client was. He doesn't remember doing anything that can make him hate him. The assassin answered him, "Who knows, maybe he didn't do anything wrong at all, but he's just abnormally strong, and there's one big shot who doesn't like it." MC asked him to tell him more about it, and then the assassin cracked something with his teeth and said with a smile that he was also a professional. That's all he could say. After that, he fell dead. Alan immediately realized that he had taken poison. He called him strong, but he was only level 24. He couldn't imagine someone being so afraid of a low-level player like him. And then Melissa's voice came from behind the rocks. She remarked that it was not bad. He outsmarted experienced assassins. He turned and asked, "Is she with him?" She indignantly asked in response, "Is he kidding or something?" She was on his side. He measured her with a suspicious glance, and she offered to team up with him. It would be beneficial for her too. He told her that he didn't need partners. Not now. Not ever. And it's all because of that Emma. The girl sighed heavily and told him not to be stubborn. She had a guess who hired those assassins. What if she told him about it? He immediately became interested and asked who that person was. And she said, before answering his question, she wanted to clarify one thing. He broke the record for the fastest time to clear the wolf mine. His name is Alan, right? He asked why she was asking that. Can't she just look at his status window? She irritably answered him that she was asking this because he had it hidden. And then he realized that he had completely forgotten about it. Fame gives him a headache, so he changed his privacy settings. He turned on the status display, and now she saw his name and level. When she found out that he was only level 24, she was very surprised. It was lower than she expected. She was completely confused. That time, because of the distance, she couldn't get a good look at his level. But this is surprising. He really is lower than her level. She was sure he was around level 80. He asked her to show her level, and she pointed out that it was fair. She was a level 50 sorceress. He asked who hired the assassins to kill him, and she told him that she would gladly tell him, but she simply couldn't give that information away for free. He frowned, noting that this meant she wanted something in return. Melissa confirmed this. Let him help her, and she would tell him what he wanted to know. She pointed to a huge castle floating in the sky and said that she wanted him to help her with this. Crystal Sky Castle is a dungeon with a recommended level of 50, and it's not any ordinary dungeon. Even among dungeons of this level, it is considered the highest difficulty. It is teeming with a huge number of monsters and bosses, and they appear completely randomly. Because of this, it is impossible to prepare for it in advance. Besides, it's full of traps, so even experienced high-level adventurers will instantly die if they let their guard down. And at the very depths of the dungeon lives a crystal dragon, a monster of a completely different level compared to regular bosses. MC asked what next. She wants him to help her clear this dungeon. She confirmed it. Or rather, she wants him to give her the item dropped by the boss, the Dragon Jade Sphere. Only then will she tell him everything. He thought about it. For Melissa's level, this is a high-grade material. She asked what his answer was and uncertainly looked away. She, of course, decided to try asking, but there was no chance that a level 24 could handle this. Contrary to her expectations, Alan agreed to do it, to which she was surprised and asked in confusion if he had even listened to what she just said. The recommended level is 50. It's an incredibly dangerous high-difficulty zone. He told her that he knew all about it even more than she did. When he played, he had completed this dungeon a bunch of times. Playing by this woman's rules wasn't part of his plans, but if he didn't eliminate the one targeting him, it would hinder his leveling, so he needed to deal with this as quickly as possible. She approached him and said that if he took it on, she wouldn't mind. She'd be happy to work with him. She wanted to shake his hand, but he ignored her gesture and headed toward the castle, saying that it was time for them to hit the road. She looked at him with irritation and said that they couldn't get there yet, and there were two reasons for that. The first was the castle's difficult location. To get to the castle high in the sky, you had to apply to the royal government and undergo a teleportation rite. MC thought, what kind of rite is this? In ZFO, you could just talk to an NPC and get teleported. Is she talking about this? She told him that he didn't yet meet the requirements for the teleportation rite. It can't be completed if the adventurer is level 40 or lower. She meets the requirements, but is only level 24, so he's blocked. He sighed heavily and asked if there was a restriction. Why did she invite him? She exclaimed irritably in response that she wouldn't have invited him if she knew his level. He decided not to dwell on it and asked about the second reason. According to her, the two of them weren't enough to properly fight in this dungeon. They need a tank that can withstand powerful attacks and a healer for healing and buffs. Ideally, They also need an attacker with high DPS. A sorceress like her mainly relies on area attacks, so it's hard for her to deal enough damage against a single boss. So right now, the main priority is to raise his level. She's in no hurry, so they can calmly work on it over the next 3 months. He told her that this was a problem. She may not be in a hurry, but he is. She asked what the rush was, and he told her that he intended to be the first in the world to reach level 999. He didn't have time to trip over such trifles. Melissa said that it was certainly okay to dream, but realistically, his only option now was to level up to level 40. Without the teleportation ritual, they wouldn't reach the dungeon. He thought she was right. Completing the dungeon was entirely possible, but the level limit was a real problem, and the place was located at an incredible height. Even a wizard's flight magic probably wouldn't reach that high. Then an idea occurred to him. He took a magic stone from his inventory and told her that even without the teleportation ritual, they could get there. She asked how they would do it, and he decided to explain everything to her later. First, he had to test it. He created a drone, inserted a magic stone into it, and Melissa was surprised to ask what it was. Does this thing run on magic stones? He told her it was a magical instrument called a drone. He ordered it to fly to the castle, and when the drone took off, Melissa was amazed that it could also carry out orders. He said, "This is technology that does not exist in this world." She asked what other world he was talking about, and he told her not to bother her head with details. He began to observe the drone. Physically, it seemed like it could fly to the castle. The main question was whether there was some kind of barrier around the dungeon. He was already approaching the castle. He held his breath, and when it landed on the ice without a problem, Melissa was very surprised. She had no idea that it was actually possible to get there without a ritual. She asked, so he was going to build a huge version of this drone so that it would transport them there? In that case, they should return to the city right now and gather the group. He immediately rejected it. The two of them were enough. Confused, she asked, "What about the rest of the group?" He told her they didn't need them. Honestly, he could handle it alone. She asked where he got such confidence from, and he said he wasn't going to build a huge drone. The bigger it was, the worse the energy consumption would be. It was obvious that it would collapse before they even got there. Instead, they were using a new energy source completely different from magic stones, and that energy source would be her. A sorceress can use magic of different attributes. They use it as energy. Melissa didn't understand anything at all, and Alan decided to just show her everything. He created a basket and a piece of fabric and told her it was a hot air balloon and they would fly there. He decided to test it out right away and told her to get in, and she asked doubtfully what she was supposed to do. First, he told her to fill the balloon with wind so it would inflate. She did this, and the balloon rose, and now she needed to heat the air inside to fly. Anything that created heat would do, but a flaming hand was the best because it used the least amount of mana. She used the spell, raised her hand, and he told her to hold it like that. When they finally started to lift off, she asked him surprised what was going on, and he explained to her that the balloon was rising due to the difference in density. They couldn't let the fire go out until they reached the dungeon. If the air cooled and the density changed, they would fall and crash to their deaths. She clenched her teeth nervously and exclaimed that he should have told her about this earlier. If she spent too much mana here, she wouldn't be able to fight properly up there. He told her it wasn't a problem. He'd handle the enemies in the dungeon himself. But she didn't really believe him. He was only level 24 after all. She glanced down and noticed how high they'd already risen. After seeing him do something so incredible, a part of her began to expect a lot from him. If it was Alan, maybe they really could get through this dungeon. Very soon, they found themselves in front of the gates of the Crystal Sky Castle. MC praised Melissa for her good work since they'd gotten there without any problems, and she, who had kept her hand raised the entire flight, wasn't feeling the best. There were quite a lot of people at the entrance to the castle, all because it was an open dungeon. If another group got through, they'd be forcibly ejected, and they'd have to start all over again. They decided to hurry to make sure no one else took the dragon's jade orb, and Alan suggested that they leave the regular mobs to the other groups and focus on completing the dungeon. On the way there, she explained everything to him. This dungeon consists of 3 floors, but the MC didn't let her finish and asked if, to move from the bottom floor to the middle floor, she needed to get 3 crystals from the rewards on this floor. Right? She asked him in surprise how he knew this, and he replied that he would gladly tell her, but he couldn't just give the information away for free. Melissa grinned nervously. He had just said the same thing she had said to him back then. She noticed that he was quite vindictive, and they suddenly stopped. Ahead was a huge minotaur, which had just encountered another group of adventurers. It was a level 45 monster. Melissa decided to let it pass, and offered him to go to another floor, but Alan refused. The other floors took too much time. He was not going to give up the crystal here. He ordered the adventurers to make way. If they were going to waste time on nonsense, maybe they could just leave. The guy turned around and indignantly asked who he was to speak so arrogantly, and upon seeing his level 24, he burst out laughing and exclaimed, "What kind of nonsense is he talking about?" They decided to give in to this newbie, and went their separate ways, for which Alan was immensely grateful. The Minotaur screamed furiously and charged, and Melissa worriedly told Alan to wait. Her mana hadn't recovered yet, so she wasn't ready for battle. But MC didn't care. He had his miracle weapon. He took out a sandworm magic stone and created a rocket launcher with 14,500 attack power and over 30,000 bonuses. Melissa was simply shocked. Alan slung the rocket launcher over his shoulder, aimed, and then fired, causing a powerful explosion and a wave of heat covering everyone around him. That's how the bottomless Minotaur boss was defeated, and MC leveled up to 25. The other adventurers were shocked. How did he kill the boss in one shot? Melissa laughed nervously, saying that he was not bad. But what exactly did he do? He ignored her and thought, maybe the sandworm magic stone was not even needed. He took the crystal. There were still 2 left, and asked Melissa if she minded if he took the Minotaur stone. She confusedly answered him that she did not mind, and then he immediately rushed to the next zone, and she looked after him in shock and thought, a level 24 person killed a level 45 boss in one shot? Shouldn't an artisan be a useless class? They reached the bottom floor, the paths of the abyss. Beyond this passage, there are 2 more zones. In both of them, they only need to pass the mechanisms. Then they can effectively collect the crystals. Melissa noted that first, they need to overcome this mechanism. The path is broken. How should they proceed? He answered her that everything was fine. The floor was just transparent. If you walk correctly on the transparent floor, you can reach the end. Melissa asked what would happen if you go the wrong way. He nodded towards the other adventurers. Just now, one of them had dared to step into this abyss, but there was no floor under his feet, and he fell. Now Melissa understood what would happen. The standard strategy is to use something like a staff to determine the position of the floor, but if Alan showed it, people would just start copying him, and everything would end badly because everyone would be pushing. And then Melissa thought of something and suggested that he build a bridge. He answered her that if that were possible, everyone else would have flown across the abyss long ago using flight magic or something similar. He suggested that she try using magic. She waved her hand, but nothing happened, which made her confused. Magic and skills are limited here, Melissa asked. Does that mean he can't use his skill here either? He confirmed this, and the girl immediately became upset, realizing that they had reached a dead end. But MC still had one way. There were 2 crystals left to the middle floor, and new creatures couldn't be used here, but the inventory still worked. It was enough to create the necessary ones in advance. This item fell into his hands. Melissa tilted her head to the side with interest, wondering what it was, and he answered her. These were night vision goggles created with the help of a magical bat stone with which he would be able to see the invisible floor. She said that if this was true, then it was simply amazing. But when did he even have time to make such a thing? He answered her that while she was admiring the views from the hot air balloon he started creating. She was surprised. Even she didn't know all the complex mechanisms of this dungeon. What kind of person was he? Alan put on the night vision goggles and said that this device detects infrared light. Even if the floor is invisible, it can be seen. And indeed, he saw the way. Now they could move without problems. Melissa didn't believe him and pretended to be delighted. And then MC suddenly picked her up, which made her very nervous. So he decided to save time and ran straight into the abyss. The girl waved her arms in fear, asking him to stop, and he told her not to talk. Otherwise, she would bite her tongue. He advised her to relax, after which he quickly ran across the abyss, which shocked the other adventurers, because in their eyes, he was running straight through thin air. Melissa had already started crying. She kept asking him to stop, but they had long ago crossed the abyss and gone into another room. But there, too, a riddle awaited them. 2 paths. Alan said that both paths were correct. At the very end of each, there was a crystal. She suggested that they split up, and he asked if she was angry about something. She irritably ordered him to shut up, and he, looking her up and down with a frown, said that he would gladly split up, but he had doubts. They would go together. It would be a problem if she died, because if she died, he wouldn't be able to get information about the assassins. They took the right path, where a pendulum trap was prepared for them. Melissa asked, puzzled, if they fell here, they would die, right? He told her that it would definitely hurt if it hit them, and when she asked what they should do, he already had an answer prepared. It's simple. They just need to destroy it. He took out a rifle and started shooting down the blades, and the girl noted with a smile that skills can still be used here, and he added, magic too. She also started shooting at the blades, quickly passing this path, and finally, they reached the room with the crystal, the Hall of Cliffs. The crystal was at the very top of the wall. Melissa immediately looked around in search of some kind of instant death mechanism, and MC told her to try touching the wall. As soon as she touched it, or rather, let out a disgruntled sigh tinged with disgust. The wall was incredibly slippery and slick, and she asked irritably, did she really have to touch it? And then a brilliant thought popped into her head. They could climb up without touching the wall if he used the crafting skill. Alan smiled and noted that she was right. It seemed she had finally grasped the versatility of the artisan class. She immediately covered her hand in fire and told him to hurry. Is he using a balloon to climb up here? But that wasn't the case. A balloon would be overkill for this place. He had something else on his mind. An elevator. A platform with railings immediately appeared beneath their feet. Melissa looked around in disbelief and asked what it was. He inserted the magic stone into the slot, pressed the lift button, and told her it was called an elevator. It moved up and down and could transport people and cargo. She was delighted with his creations, and in the blink of an eye, they were at the top. She took the crystal. There was only one left, and MC immediately decided to go to it. The next room was filled with poisonous swamps. Melissa asked why there was such a thing inside the castle at all, and he said the poison here was strong. Accidentally touching it could cause a status ailment. She looked at him with a confident smile, wondering what item he was using this time, and he, grinning smugly, launched a boat into the water. She even seemed surprised, as was usually the case, and Alan immediately understood what she was thinking. He climbed into the boat, and she asked if it wasn't supposed to be some incredible, mysterious thing like before. He asked in response, why go so far if a simple boat would do? Let her climb in already. She remarked that it was somehow too mundane, after which she climbed into the boat and asked where the oars or rowing strokes were. He told her that this is where teamwork would be needed. She would be the engine. She didn't quite understand what that meant, but when he explained everything to her, she fired wind magic. Alan simply decided to use her magic as a driving force. She felt a little offended and asked if that wasn't too much of a burden on her. MC ignored her. He was currently resting. They finally reached the other shore and obtained the third final crystal. Melissa said that at first, she thought it was impossible, but even with two people, it was surprisingly easy. He told her that it was natural because the artisan is the strongest class. He suggested that she continue, and she thought, the strongest here isn't his class, but his. They've known each other for only a short time, but now she can say for sure that this man named Alan will become an adventurer whose name will go down in history. A few minutes later, they reached the transfer room in the center of which was a pedestal. If they insert the crystals into the hole in it, they can teleport to the middle floor. Finally, they are approaching the climax. Melissa said that she'd been thinking about this for a long time, but he never gets lost as if he knows everything about this castle. He answered her with a smile that he'd bet his whole life on this, and then inserted the crystals and they were teleported to the middle floor where there was another portal. MC told the girl that the middle floor was an instant dungeon, and she remarked, it's strange to see a portal to a dungeon within a dungeon. Alan said it was like a Russian doll. Of course, she didn't understand what it was, and he promised to show it to her if he remembered it after conquering the castle. He was about to go through the portal, but Melissa stopped him. Before tackling the dungeon, she offered him a small bet. According to the information she had gathered, the middle floor consisted of two separate sections. In the first section, they would face a huge crowd of weaklings. MC noted that this seemed true, and she asked, since the number of defeated enemies was recorded during this battle, why don't they see who could destroy the most? He smirked and noted that the odds were clearly tipped in her favor. Melissa's class of sorcerer specializes in area attacks. On the other hand, the firearms he uses specialize in single-target attacks. She decided to challenge him and asked if he was afraid of losing to her. He noted that she knew how to provoke, and she said that her magic wasn't just a source of energy for transport. It would show him the true value of a sorceress. She challenged him only to get him to acknowledge her. She's confident she won't lose to any ordinary adventurer. He told her that terms were fine with him. In any case, it would likely help them get through the floor faster. She said they'd agreed that the loser would treat the winner to a potion, and Alan added an expensive potion. They reached the middle floor, the first section. A ton of weak enemies lay ahead of them, and the battle began. There were 1,500 monsters in this hall, and they all rushed to attack at once. Melissa waved her hand, cast a black nebula spell, and a black hole appeared above her head from which balls of purple flame flew, but they quickly smashed all the enemies to dust, and she turned to Alan. What's his opinion on her strength? He told her that was expected of a sorceress, and now it was his turn. He took out a machine gun, told the monsters to taste lead, and then opened fire, watching the monsters fall quickly. Melissa asked in surprise what kind of weapon it was. Both the power and the rate of fire were on a completely different level. He told her that the machine gun had limited movement, but for clearing, it was one of the best among all firearms. She should give up while she still could. This only made her indignant. As a sorceress, she couldn't allow another class to surpass her in clearing power. 2 minutes later, Alan had 888 kills and Melissa only 612. He won, which made the girl very upset and said that he was just mocking her. Couldn't she really win even in clearing enemies? He told her not to be so upset. The difference wasn't that big. She just chose the wrong enemy. She thought that he really had fixed the exceptions, after which they moved on to the second section. Next, they had a boss fight for this section. If they won, all that remained was the top floor and the fight with the crystal dragon. They were almost to the point where they could get the jade dragon orb. Melissa said that with it, this dungeon would be so easy even though it was considered the highest difficulty for their level range. And finally, the boss appeared. A level 50 crystal ogre riding a crystal manticore. Melissa was surprised by 2 bosses at once, and MC noted it looked like they were using combined attacks. She suggested that he somehow separate them, and then he simply created a rocket launcher saying that he would simply blow them both away. Melissa was very happy. This was the same weapon that instantly killed the boss of the bottom floor, but unlike that rocket launcher, this one had no additional effects, and she asked if it wasn't weaker than the one he used on the bottom floor. He told her that it was the normal version, but he had increased the firepower too much. She asked doubtfully if everything would be all right, to which she replied, even with standard stats, it would kill in one shot if it hit the target directly. Also, since it's a standard build, it won't break after firing. Weapons crafted using magic stones are powerful, but the downside is that they break when they run out of ammunition, leaving a window of vulnerability until the next creation. 2 monsters rushed to attack. He told Melissa to freeze the ground, and she immediately did so. A layer of ice passed along the ground in a line forward, and Alan thought the speed is inferior to the werewolf, but the manticore still has high evasiveness. If you attack from the front, the monster will simply dodge, so first he needs to force it into a situation where dodging is impossible. To avoid the ice, the manticore jumped, and then MC took aim with a smile. The enemy doesn't have wings, so it can't use its mobility in the air. He fired. The ogre saw this and immediately jumped, which surprised the two. He used the manticore as a springboard. The blow hit the monster and he himself survived. It was a move that was impossible in the game. An ogre appeared from the smoke after the explosion, heading straight for Alan, raising his club above his head. Melissa called out to him worriedly, telling him to run. Her strength wasn't enough to stop him. She understood that his level was incredibly low, hidden behind the overwhelming power of his skills. Moreover, he didn't have proper armor. If he got hit by the boss in this state, he would die instantly, but she had to somehow withstand it if she took the hit instead. She ran towards him, but he was already very close, and she realized she wouldn't make it in time. Melissa called out to Alan worriedly, and he thought. Using the manticore as a springboard to dodge was unexpected, but the situation itself was exactly as he expected. By this time, he had already managed to reload, and as soon as the ogre was very close to him, he fired and there was an explosion. After that, he breathed a sigh of relief. Everything happened pretty much as he expected. Because of defeating the boss, his level increased to 26. Melissa, confused, said that she thought he had run out of ammo, and he told her that it was an automatic reload function. Unlike the weapons he had crafted earlier, the rocket launcher he had just used automatically reloads when its ammunition reaches 0. She said that for a second, she thought it was over, to which he replied that it was actually pretty close. If the reload hadn't finished in time, he would have died. She remarked that he was too calm for someone who had just been on the brink of death, to which he replied because he had already factored the second shot into his calculations. She noted that he was 1 step ahead, as always, after which he picked up the magic stone and stood up, saying that only the crystal dragon remained for them. Looking at him, Melissa thought she had met many adventurers who relied solely on brute force, but she had never met anyone who was so full of absolute confidence and calm as Alan, and that was why they had set their sights on his life. After passing through the portal, they found themselves in front of the entrance to the top floor in the boss room. She pushed the doors, getting ready to begin the long-awaited final battle, and MC told her that this door was just for show. This floor uses a portal teleportation system, like the middle one, but there was no portal anywhere, which meant someone was already inside. Melissa worriedly asked if the other group was already fighting the boss. He confirmed this and she touched her chin in confusion. She knew things were bad. If they beat the boss first, they'd have to start all over again. He crouched down and said that worrying wouldn't change anything. They could strategize while they waited. The boss of this zone, the Crystal Dragon, used an instant death attack. Melissa was very surprised. She didn't even know that, and Alan reminded her that their opponent was an epic class, so it was very possible. The girl was surprised because an epic class is an even higher rank than the boss. Not only do they have much higher stats than the boss, but they also have different unique features depending on the enemy. MC told her about the Crystal Dragon's unique features, an instant death attack and a damage limit. The latter means there's a strict limit on the damage that can be dealt, no matter how powerful the attack. Any damage exceeding the limit is completely negated. She clarified. So its overwhelming firepower is useless here? He confirmed it. Besides, the dragon has an instant death attack, so he wants to determine their battle strategy in advance. There are endless waves of small enemies in the boss room. They will appear until the boss is killed, so he needs her to destroy these mobs and he will deal with the boss. She agreed, but clarified what he would do during the instant death attack, to which he replied that he would somehow handle it. When he gave the signal, let her hide behind him. She told him that she understood everything, and finally, a portal appeared at the door, and since they were not teleported outside the castle, it means that the previous group's battle was over. They were destroyed. Alan said that once they teleported to this zone, there was no escape, and Melissa said nervously, just think, even experienced adventurers who were to reach the boss could not defeat him. She wondered if they were killed by the instant death attack or something else. She was already starting to get nervous. He told her that everything would be fine. If they stuck to the strategy, they would definitely win. She smiled slightly nervously and asked, "They can do it, right?" To give her confidence, he told her to rely on him until he became the world's first level 999. He couldn't afford to die. They entered the boss area, which was a large coliseum. A pile of dead adventurers lay in the arena. Melissa kept looking back at them, and MC said that they had no time to be afraid. The boss was already here. A crystal dragon descended from the sky, flapped its wings, hovered above them, and then screamed loudly. Now, Melissa finally saw with her own eyes what an epic class really was. Alan told her not to give in to pressure. He wasn't the only enemy here. They were surrounded by a huge crowd of monsters. MC took out a machine gun and reminded the girl that all the mobs were on her, then opened fire on the monster, dealing heavy damage one after another. The machine gun's rate of fire is the perfect countermeasure against the damage limit, so it's not a problem. But Melissa was delighted. She was delighted with how he was suppressing the boss, and he said, the Crystal Dragon is a problematic opponent, but as long as they know its mechanics, there's nothing to fear. They will press it with advantage. Melissa continued attacking, but at one point, Alan ran out of ammo, and the dragon took advantage of this to attack. It raised its head, and MC immediately recognized this move. It was an instant death attack. He warned the girl about this, and she immediately retreated and hid behind it. The dragon gathered the black flames of death in its mouth and then aimed them at them, and the girl worriedly called out to Alan. He used the creation skill, and a wall grew from the ground. Melissa didn't understand what it was, and MC told her it was a fireproof shield. The instant death attack is dangerous, but if you don't come into direct contact, there will be no problems. Now she understood why he made it a freestanding shield. He said the machine gun had already reloaded. As soon as the boss's attack ended, they would launch a counterattack. Suddenly, the shield cracked, and Alan noted that things were bad. That wasn't in the plan. He thought the fireproof shield could block it, but its strength wasn't enough. With a new gust of flame, new cracks appeared on the shield. Any more, and it would break. MC wondered what he should do now. There was no guarantee that another fireproof shield would hold. He needed another way. One of the shield's layers cracked, and Melissa called out to Alan in fear, making him nervous. He couldn't afford to die in a place like this. He quickly came up with a way out of this situation, and created a fire extinguisher with a slot for a magic stone. That was the first thing that came to mind when he thought about what he could put out the fire with. To maximize its power, he fused it with the strongest material he had, the crystal ogre magic stone. But would it really work? He ran out of cover. There was only one way to find out if it would work. He bet everything on his ability, turned to the flames, and doused them with a fire extinguisher. Luckily, it worked. Melissa was surprised. This thing collided directly with the dragon's breath. The dragon continued to breathe flames, and MC screamed, not knowing how this confrontation would end. Eventually, The fire extinguisher put out the dragon's powerful flames, and the deadly attack finally ended, leaving the girl in shock. He told her that a fire extinguisher is not a weapon. As the name suggests, it is a tool for extinguishing fire. He took out a machine gun, and since the crisis was averted, it was time to counterattack. He opened fire, and the dragon's health began to gradually decrease, and Melissa was delighted. The dragon fell from the heavy damage. Alan told Melissa to act. Let her ignore the small things. They would finish him off together. She joined the attack, and together they quickly reduced the enemy's health bar to half, not even giving him a chance to strike back. And finally, the dragon was defeated. His body turned into many small crystals and scattered across the arena. And wow, the levels increased. Melissa asked, wasn't he a little panicked? He told her that it didn't matter since they won. He took the dragon's magic stone, and she asked, what about the jade dragon sphere? He pointed to a chest not far from them, and said that it was there. After defeating the boss, a treasure chest appears. She could check it out for herself. She opened the chest with anticipation, and there it was, her long-awaited jade dragon sphere. She reached out for it, still not believing that they had completed this dungeon together. But suddenly, MC coldly ordered her to stop. He pointed a gun at the back of her head and said that as soon as she took it, the passage would be considered complete, and they would automatically be teleported outside the dungeon. She asked warily, and then what? He reminded her of the terms of their collaboration. She was going to tell him who had sent those assassins after him. She closed her eyes and said carefully, that's right, that was the deal. She would tell. So let him put away that dangerous thing. He raised his gun. She sighed heavily and stood up, finally getting ready to tell him everything. She calmly and honestly admitted to him that she didn't know who it was. This made him very angry. He immediately pointed the gun at her head, and she nervously asked him to calm down. She had a rough idea which organization was behind this. She had reliable information, so let him take his time. He took a deep breath, pulled himself together, and put the gun away, saying that he would listen to her. If the information turned out to be useful, he would turn a blind eye to it. So, which organization ordered his assassination? For starters, what does she mean by organization? Is it a clan? She told him it was something much larger, an organization he was very familiar with, the Adventurers Guild. He frowned and asked why they were doing that. Their goal was to defeat the Demon Lord, and he'd already said he was willing to contribute, hadn't he? She told him that if he were just an ordinary adventurer, there wouldn't be a problem, but he was too strong. Alan remembered the assassin who had attacked him had said the same thing, and there was one person who didn't like it. Melissa added that he was much stronger than other adventurers of his level. At this rate, he could really defeat the Demon Lord. There were people within the guild who didn't want that to happen. If the Demon Lord died, the world would be peaceful. If the world was peaceful, adventures would no longer be needed. If adventurers were no longer needed, the Adventurers Guild would be disbanded, and the guild wanted to avoid that. He rephrased this. They were eliminating talented adventurers just to protect their own positions. She confirmed this, but not all guild leaders thought so. Only a few people didn't want the Demon Lord to be defeated. This group was known as the Demon Lord's Legacy Faction. MC asked, so who was the leader of this faction? Even if he didn't know who ordered the attack, the problem would be solved by eliminating the leader, right? She spread her hands. The problem is, they didn't know who it was. The Heritage faction simply doesn't want the Demon Lord's defeat. They haven't actually colluded with the Demon Lord's army, so they don't engage in open sabotage. Furthermore, the Heritage faction isn't necessarily limited to guild leaders, weapon and item dealers, clerics, undertakers, tavern and adventurer, entertainment establishment owners, and so on. Anyone whose position would be threatened by the Demon Lord's defeat could be a member of this. He scratched his head in confusion and remarked, if you think about it that far, there will be no end. She said, however, given the methods used this time, it's most likely someone from the Heritage faction within the guild. Alan said he didn't care who the culprit was, but he wasn't going to turn a blind eye to those who hinder his leveling. How do other adventurers who were targeted cope? She wanted to tell him about herself, but he immediately said that her case didn't fit. He wants to hear about other promising adventurers who, like him, are being hunted. She said with offense that, technically, she was also one of those promising ones. He looked away, and she cleared her throat and finally told him about the assassination attempts. Meanwhile, all the adventurers in the dungeon were teleported outside. They immediately realized that someone had defeated the dragon, and the names of the victors were finally announced, Alan and Melissa. They were initially shocked that there were only 2 people in the team, but since it was Melissa's group, they realized that with her powers, it was possible. After all, she is a high-class sorceress. But who is this other one? Alan? No one had ever heard of him, but everyone thought he was probably high level too. Finally, the two exited the dungeon, and MC immediately decided to return to the city. Melissa asked how he would get down from there, to which he replied that there was no problem. He would just create a parachute. She, of course, didn't know what it was, and when he was about to explain it to her, all the adventurers turned to her and said that she finally got out. So the guy next to her was Alan. They all started congratulating her on clearing the dungeon. Reaching the top floor was already impressive, but it was just the two of them. MC pointed out that she was a real celebrity, and she asked, she told him so, didn't she? She was a rising star, hunted by the Demon Lord's legacy faction. The adventurers pounced on her with questions about how she conquered this castle, and she, with an awkward smile, asked them all to calm down. The truly incredible thing wasn't her, but Alan. They saw his level and were very surprised. He was an artisan. That's a trash class. How did someone below level 40 even get here? MC looked around. There were plenty of adventurers of the right level here. Everyone's attention was focused on them. This was the perfect chance to advertise the weapon he had created. Melissa said they were able to clear the dungeon, thanks to him. Honestly, the versatility and power of his creations is insane. She offered to show him his weapon, and he silently praised her. But then he sensed something. He realized it would be a mistake. He asked her to stop. There was no need to go that far. He was only a level 27 craftsman. She didn't understand what was going on, and he addressed the crowd and said that Melissa had defeated the Crystal Dragon single-handedly. He was only brought in because he was needed for the mechanisms. Without her, he would have been instantly killed. Melissa smiled awkwardly, asking what was wrong, and he simply shook his head in response. If he stood out too much, it would only make leveling more difficult. This was a good chance to spread the weapon, but for now, he would hold off. Melissa frowned. She understood. He didn't want the Demon Lord's legacy faction to notice him, so he was deliberately giving them all the credit. The adventurers believed him without a doubt. After all, no craftsman could kill a dragon. They all began praising her, which made her feel uneasy, since she was essentially just walking next to him. That evening, they arrived in the capital. Melissa was planning to go to the guild and exchange magic stones, and asked what he would do. Alan immediately decided to go to the tavern without exchanging anything. He would use the magic stones for crafting. She waved her hand with a smile and remarked, so their paths parted for today. It must be hard for him to leave her. He didn't let her finish and said goodbye, which made her indignant and exclaimed that it was too abrupt. Didn't he have anything else to say? He silently noted how troublesome she was, and she sighed heavily, saying that she understood why it bothered him. She got the items she wanted, but only gave him vague information, right? He agreed with this, and she exclaimed that she didn't like it. It was unfair. She didn't want to be in his debt, so she investigated the Demon Lord's legacy faction as much as she could. He thought about it and noted, the more information, the better. She agreed with him, so he should leave it to her and wait. He told her not to die in the process, which made her indignant, and then suggested that they hunt together again sometime. Next time, she would go ahead. He only smirked at her in response, and she told him to take care of himself as a parting shot, after which they parted. She still can't believe that she, of all people, was dragged through a dungeon by a level 27 craftsman. If she mastered the sorceress class perfectly, could she gain power like his? Suddenly, she felt a strong thirst for blood, turned around, saw an assassin on the roof, and when he fired an arrow, she ran to Alan and called out to him loudly. He turned at her voice. Fortunately, he was able to react in time and deflect the arrow, which the assassin clearly didn't expect, and hurried away. Melissa said with annoyance that he left. It was dangerous. MC sighed heavily and said that he didn't think they would attack him inside the capital, and she noticed that they were clearly starting to despair. Alan was upset. At this rate, he wouldn't even be able to walk around the city, let alone hunt, and she said that's why she told him how to deal with assassins. He clicked his tongue in frustration and decided to try the method she mentioned. She irritably asked why he clicked his tongue, and then offered to act as his guard. For a fee, of course. He immediately refused, since it already sounded expensive. He could handle it himself. She smiled and said, "What a pity. Well, let him not do anything reckless. If something happens, he can count on her. After all, they are now members of the same group." He thought about it, and she indignantly asked if he had a problem with that. Since he was a man whom she acknowledged, she would not forgive him if some assassin killed him. He told her in response that he would not die even if he was killed, at least until he reached level 999. Melissa smiled and said goodbye to him, and he thought about it. In ZFO, he focused exclusively on solo leveling. It's easier alone, and there is no extra burden. He thought it would always be fine, but maybe having partners isn't so bad. He sighed heavily, realizing that he was not himself, and left, deciding to deal with these assassins for now. The next morning, he came to a place he never thought he would get involved with, but because of the Demon Lord's legacy faction. He's here in the clan association. The day before, right after defeating the Crystal Dragon, Melissa told him about the measures against assassins. The fastest way is to join a clan. He looked at her in confusion, and she began to explain what clans were, but he stopped her immediately, interested in how joining would help him deal with the assassins. She told him that it was like animals. When you're in a pack, you're less likely to be attacked, meaning there's safety in numbers. Therefore, she would recommend him joining a large, high-ranking clan. Besides, large clans usually have connections with people in power. He thought about it. The leaders of the Adventurers Guild mentioned that they could help him join the clans. Simply put, by joining a clan, he could ensure his safety and gather information at the same time. At the moment, he entered the association building and didn't even know where to go. How can he figure out which clan he should choose? He heard his name. The adventurers recognized it and started discussing it. They all knew him as the guy who completely smashed the wolf mine record. And yesterday's dungeon was on top of that. MC wasn't listening at all. He looked around and found out that there was a separate reception desk for each clan type. A clan's type indicates its main goal. For example, subjugation is focused on clearing dungeons. There are also defense, social, subjugation, and gathering. Then there's the versatile general type, which isn't limited to one specific goal. Judging by the order, the most popular ones seem to be general, subjugation, and gathering. Although he doesn't really care what's popular, a guy approached him and asked if he was looking for a clan. He was the leader of a B-rank clan of the subjugation type, Gazelles. His name is Max. According to rumors, he's a very powerful craftsman. He would like him to lend his power to his clan. Alan was lost in thought, and then another adventurer approached him and advised him not to get involved with the subjugation type. If he were to join something, it should be the general type, where he could do a variety of things. Let him join their B-rank clan, the general tiger type. They would gladly accept him. Max was indignant at his interference, and they started arguing. Other adventurers came over, attracted by the noise, and someone asked if they were arguing over that craftsman named Alan. The guy asked why they should ask for him since he was level 27. The adventurer said he must have some amazing secret. Because of this, everyone decided to try to recruit him. One woman even started seducing him. MC asked them all to be quiet for a minute. He appreciated their offers, but he was only interested in defense clans of rank A or higher. The adventurers were simultaneously upset and surprised. Defense clans have connections with the government and local lords, making them ideal for gathering information. Moreover, under the guise of defense, he might be able to distribute his newly created weapons to different cities, and the clan's high rank would give him the ideal support he needed. He told them, if their clan doesn't meet these conditions, let them leave. He won't discuss other options. No matter how good the conditions are, they all clicked their tongues in disappointment and dispersed. Alan thought they were leaving faster than he expected. At this rate, no one would be left. A man approached him and remarked, it seemed like everyone else didn't meet his requirements except him. His name was Flynn. He was a level 378 player and the clan master of a rank A defense type, Holy Guardian. MC frowned. He had a high level. Even in ZFO, it was rare to see that. The man asked if he was sure he wanted to join a defense type clan. Unlike other types, they have strict discipline and can't offer special treatment. Alan remembered what Melissa had told him. If he joined on a probationary basis first, it would be easier to leave. Plus, his name would get more exposure, so he'd kill two birds with one stone. He told Flynn that if probationary membership was possible, he'd like to join. He wasn't against it. After all, it was important to check compatibility. He sent him an invitation to join the clan. He accepted, and Flynn shook his hand, welcoming him to the team. He'd show him their headquarters right away. They discussed the details there. Soon they were there. Flynn brought him into his office and asked if he knew what a defense-type clan was. Right. He replied that he only knew that they went to towns and villages to intercept the Demon Lord's army. Flynn remarked that that was generally true. Then he'd start by explaining their rules. MC was slightly surprised. He didn't expect there to be rules either. Flynn said, they usually operate in squads of 3. These groups are formed from members of similar levels. At the mention of groups, Alan's expression immediately darkened. Does that mean he can't go alone? Flynn confirmed this, and he thought discontentedly. Being assigned to a group would only hinder his leveling. Flynn explained his duties. For now, He would patrol the city. He would be able to join defense missions once he leveled up a bit. MC didn't like this at all. Patrols were essentially just a stroll. This way, he wouldn't be able to level up, and in the city, he could be attacked again by members of the Demon Lord's legacy faction. Like yesterday, Flynn said that was all the explanation. Does he have any questions? He remained silent. He definitely couldn't work under such conditions. On the other hand, even if he left, it wouldn't solve the problem with the Demon Lord's legacy faction. If he could participate in defense missions, he would be able to distribute the weapons he created. Noticing his frown, the man asked with a smile, "What's wrong?" He took a deep breath, having no choice but to agree, and he said, he has no questions, but he does have a request. He's not particularly interested in patrols. He wants to participate in defense missions instead. Flynn politely declined. As long as he works with them, he must follow the rules. Alan said he knew this. That's why, if he can prove his strength, he wants Alan to make a special exception for him. The man became interested and offered to duel him. If he wins, he will make an exception for him. Flynn smiled enticingly and said that he admired his enthusiasm, but unfortunately, he couldn't accept this request. He asked the reason, and the man said he didn't know what he was so fixated on. But why doesn't he participate in the clan's regular activities for about a week first? If he still has any thoughts after that, he can talk to him again. MC agreed. It was a trial membership anyway, so if it didn't suit him, he'd leave. He knew there was no point in arguing further, and then there was a knock at the door. Flynn noticed that they had arrived, his party members. The two of them entered the office and asked if this was the newcomer. Flynn introduced them to him, Naoki and Haina, both spearmen. Naoki was level 55, and Haina was level 40. They both greeted him quite friendly, and he asked if party members weren't usually selected from people of similar levels. Flynn replied that these two were the lowest level members of their clan. After all, they were an A-rank clan. Naoki looked Alan over and asked the master, "Is this newcomer really going to be okay? He looked very weak, and his level was too low." Haina immediately pulled his ear, telling him not to be rude. And Flynn replied, "His level may be low, but it seems he's quite famous on the streets." Naoki looked Alan up and down and noticed how tall he was, which meant he was skilled despite his low level. He was very surprised to see his class, and Haina exclaimed, "Could it really be that Alan?" Naoki asked, "Does that mean she knows him?" She told him it was the one who had cleared the Crystal Sky Castle with Melissa yesterday. The guy was simply shocked. He was a level 27 craftsman. Flynn remarked that this was quite impressive, and MC asked suspiciously, didn't he know about him? He laughed and apologized. A crowd had gathered outside the clan association, and he just dropped in out of curiosity. Then he started listing the conditions, and he turned out to be the only one who met them. He decided that an adventurer who was attracting so much attention must be talented. Haina, delighted, asked, "Can they really be in a party with such an incredible person?" But Naoki still didn't believe in his strength and hesitantly said that he was probably just parasitizing on Melissa. Someone like her could probably do it all alone. Haina asked, "Does that mean he knows her?" He told her that he was a celebrity, and Alan thought she called herself a rising star. It seemed she was telling the truth. Flynn suggested that the three of them go hunting now. That way they would get a rough idea of each other's abilities. They didn't mind, and Naoki playfully nudged Alan with his elbow, saying that if he wanted to admit that he was actually a weakling, now was his only chance. MC was starting to get annoyed that he was picking on him for no reason, and he decided to just play along a little to get over it. He said, as expected of an elder, he saw through him right away. He's right. Melissa completely dominated the Crystal Sky Castle alone. He was just a hitchhiker. Flynn immediately suspected something, and Naoki was glad that he was right. He patted him on the shoulder and told him not to worry, to just rely on his superior. Alan said he would count on him, and he happily exclaimed, "Since when did they communicate so friendly?" They said goodbye to the master and left, after which he thought he was a terrible liar. At level 27, he wouldn't even be able to reach the Crystal Sky Castle, let alone complete it. He doesn't know what method he used, but an adventurer who makes the impossible possible can't be just a sidekick. The three went to the Trent's Forest. Naoki asked if the newbie knew anything about this place, and MC replied that he knew nothing at all. He avoided this place in ZFO, because compared to the recommended experience level, it gave a garbage amount. Haina told him there were monsters called Trents here, which disguised themselves as trees. Without detection skills, it was impossible to tell which ones they were. He clarified, they The two spearmen can't use detection skills, right? Maybe he should create detection items. Naoki told him not to underestimate them. Trents weren't a threat to them at all. Then Alan sensed an enemy's presence. He warned that it was to the guy's left, and at that very second, the Trent lunged and nearly killed them. Luckily, they managed to dodge. Hina asked her partner if he was okay, and he smiled and told her everything was fine, suggesting she finish it off quickly. The Trent lunged again, launching branches at them, which they deftly avoided as they approached the monster. They both struck simultaneously, cutting through the branches. After watching them, MC wondered if this was how ordinary adventurers moved. Naoki turned to him and asked enthusiastically, did he see their teamwork? Alan didn't care and simply replied that it was pretty good. The guy was indignant, and Hina told him to focus. They needed to finish this off. They both landed a few hits on the monster, finishing it off. But that wasn't all. A bunch of the same monsters came running at the noise. Naoki grinned and told Alan to try to kill them. If anything happened, they'd cover him. MC grinned and said that was encouraging, then created a machine gun, and the guy looked surprised, asking what it was. Hina quickly figured out it was a weapon, while Alan thought he could spot the enemies simply by installing a thermal scope. But if he just cleared the area, it wouldn't matter. He opened fire and began swinging the weapon from side to side, hitting every monster. His group members were completely shocked, and when a few seconds later, there was nothing left of the Trents, MC turned to the elder and said with a smile that he did it. Naoki became nervous, and Hina exclaimed with delight that it was amazing. Naoki looked away. He didn't really want to praise him, and then someone's voice came from behind the bushes, telling Alan that he finally found him. He turned around. It was Lucas, and judging by his red eyes, he had been obsessed with thoughts about him this whole time. MC pretended not to remember him, and he exclaimed irritably, did he really dare to forget the great Lucas? Let him say something. Doesn't he remember how he embarrassed him in the wolf mine? Alan asked, and why did he embarrass himself just because he broke the record for the passage? Lucas exclaimed, so he actually remembers it. He was just mocking him. Naoki irritably asked what was wrong with him, and Hina remarked that he was kind of scary. Lucas, with a smug smile, told him to look at his level. MC noted that he was level 73. When he ran into him at the wolf mine, he was only level 65. Lucas pointed out that he finally noticed his level, and he responded that he himself told him to look at it. A week had passed since then. He had leveled up quite well. By this world's standards, this is incredibly effective. The guy exclaimed that he did it to defeat him. Alan asked how exactly he was going to do it. This wasn't an instance dungeon, so they couldn't compete in time. Lucas drew his sword and told him that he wasn't going to do something so tedious. A one-on-one duel right then and there. MC asked what happened to his friends. He told him he'd abandoned those useless weaklings, and the two indignantly said, challenging someone below him to a one-on-one duel is a dirty game. He ordered them to shut up. The audience should be silent. His bloodlust scared them. Alan, meanwhile, pulled out a gun and said that everything was fine with him, but he wouldn't advise a one-on-one duel. It would give him too much of an advantage. Lucas irritably told him not to act tough. He already knew the secret of his firearms. It was powerful against monsters, but didn't work on people. He threatened the adventurers at the wolf mine to tell him his secrets, and if he wanted to defeat him, he better create a sword too. MC didn't let him finish and fired. The bullet grazed his ear, but he screamed as if it had been completely torn off. Alan said his information was outdated, and Lucas fell in fear, clutching his ear and screaming in pain. MC said it was just a scratch, but not to worry. Next time he'd shoot him in the head. Lucas became very nervous. He knew he couldn't handle him and decided to retreat, but finally said he'd spare him today to remember that. Alan said he wasn't sure, and Naoki wondered how he'd beaten level 73 so easily. Hina, however, seemed so delighted with the newcomer that she'd practically fallen in love. They continued on, with Hina walking beside Alan. He said, now all that remains is to defeat the King of Trents in the very depths. She remarked that he's so reliable, much stronger than them. He told her in response that he might get into trouble if they relied on him too much, and she smiled widely. She always thought that artisans were weak, but they could be very strong if you knew how to use their advantages. He noted that it definitely had more quirks than other classes, but for him, it was the perfect class. He asked why she chose a spearman, and while they were chatting casually, Naoki became very nervous, because at this rate, the newbie would steal Hina from him. She started talking about love affairs, and he immediately got between them, causing Hina to fall, and he worriedly told her to watch her surroundings. And MC called for a strategy meeting. He said that they didn't really need a strategy, and Naoki simply told him to follow him. Hina called out to him indignantly, but he ignored her and led Alan into the bushes. He looked around to make sure she couldn't hear them, and the MC asked what he was planning. They should discuss strategy together. He told him that the meeting was just an excuse. He wanted to ask him something. He fell to his knees in front of him and bowed his head, asking him to take his hands off Hina. They were childhood friends, but his feelings for her were stronger than friendship. He was in love with her, so it would be a problem for him if he continued to stand out. Alan sighed heavily. He didn't want to waste time on unnecessary drama, and more importantly, it was terribly annoying. It would be better if he helped them start dating quickly. He told the guy to relax. He wasn't interested in romance. Maybe he could help him. He exclaimed excitedly, "Is that true?" The MC said that there would be a boss fight soon. They would put on a little show there. At first, he would fight him alone. Naoki stopped him and noted with bewilderment that with his attack power, he wouldn't even get a turn. He told him that the weapon he created could adjust its firepower with a limiter, so he would lower its firepower and pretend to be struggling. Naoki was delighted and said that he would intervene later and defeat the boss. He confirmed this. The King of Trent's weakness is its mobility. If it just runs around and attacks, it's easy to defeat alone. The guy was so overjoyed that he rushed to hug him and thank him. Alan barely managed to pry him off. Then they reunited with Hina and went to fight the boss. The King of Trent's was a huge level 35 tree. Hina immediately asked what the plan was, to which he replied that it wouldn't be necessary. The two of them could just stand behind. Hina clung to him and Naoki nervously told him, in his mind, that he was counting on him. But just tell him not to stand so close to her. MC created an assault rifle with only 5 attack power. He reduced the power as much as he could, but he couldn't get it all the way down to 0. With that kind of attack power, there shouldn't be any problems. Hina was delighted and Naoki was surprised. He didn't know there were so many types of firearms. Alan ran up to the monster and told them that this weapon was called an assault rifle. It had less firepower than a machine gun, but it was easier to handle. He fired at the monster several times, but it didn't react at all, which confused Hina. Meanwhile, MC turned on his acting game and asked why it wasn't working. Had he really made a mistake with the settings? At this rate, he would be defeated. Naoki realized that his time had come. He rushed into battle, telling the newcomer to leave the boss to him, and the girl called out to him worriedly. He turned to her with a smile, saying that everything would be fine, and that she should just watch his heroic performance. She was very worried, but didn't stop him. Naoki dodged the monster's attacks, got very close, and delivered the most powerful blow he could, causing the trunk to crack. Hina exclaimed delightedly that he was so amazing, and Alan said emotionlessly, as expected of their leader, he was so reliable. Apparently, it might take time, but there shouldn't be any problems, so he decided not to interfere. Naoki deftly dodged the blows, looked at the monster and exclaimed, "It can't hit him because it's too big?" Because he had his head up, he couldn't see where he was going and tripped over a root, landing face first on the ground. Hina became worried, and MC wondered, is he serious? The boss immediately took advantage of his position and released a bunch of branches. Naoki didn't have time to get up, so Alan rushed to his aid. Naoki was already one step away from death. MC pulled out a flare gun and fired, saying that it was impossible to watch this without tears. There was an explosion, and the monster died instantly. After the explosion, smoke rose. Naoki coughed, and Alan picked up a magic crystal from the ground and asked if he could get up. He was now level 28. Hina immediately ran to him, asking how he killed the King of Trent's with one blow. She hugged his hand in delight, which made Naoki angry and asked why he interfered. He had the situation completely under control. He apologized to him, but Hina immediately stood up for him and exclaimed, "How can he say that? When someone saves you, you should say thank you." She started calling him an idiot, a jerk, clumsy, and a slowpoke, which made the guy get really upset and start crying. After that, Hina turned to Alan and apologized to him for her friend's rudeness. He noticed that she was exaggerating and thought he was a bit of a goofy guy, but he could understand why he wanted to look cool in front of the girl he liked. Hina exclaimed that he was so amazing, and although it was a little difficult for him at first, in the end, he defeated the boss so easily. While she looked at him with her eyes sparkling with delight, Naoki cried and silently begged him for help. He told her that he was able to win because Naoki had already cornered him, and he only delivered the finishing blow. So this victory belongs to Naoki. She looked at him, not believing it, and he smiled nervously, saying, even though he screwed up a little, but then he was almost able to win it. MC confirmed this, and Heine suddenly hugged him, exclaiming that he was not only strong, but also humble, mature, and cool. She wanted to know more about him. When they returned to the city, they could go out to eat together. Alan didn't know what to say. He glanced at Naoki. The poor guy had already given up the ghost. How this all irritated MC. They returned to headquarters. The master immediately asked how Alan had done, and Heine enthusiastically said that he was amazing. One hit, and the boss was defeated. He also easily drove away a level 73 swordsman. He asked them to tell him more about it, and MC answered that it was a guy he encountered at the wolf mine a week ago who tried to pester them. Flynn thought about it and asked, "Is he talking about Lucas?" Alan confirmed this and asked, "Does that mean he knows him?" He replied that he had already caused trouble for members of their clan in the past, so they checked his background. If he bothers him again, let him just say the name of their clan. That should help avoid any unnecessary problems. The MC promised to do so, and now understood the deterrent power of a high-level clan. He smiled, saying he was glad he was okay, but 3 of them had done a good job. Heine happily suggested that the 4 of them go out to dinner and throw Alan a welcome party, but the master declined, citing work, and Heine tugged Alan's hand, saying that then only they would be going today. Naoki was indignant, and the clan master told them not to linger too long. He had a mission for them tomorrow. They asked what had happened, and he told them that a request had been received for the group. Heine was very happy, but the request was specifically for Alan. Heine congratulated him. He had received a personal request right on the day of his joining. Flynn said that this would not be a regular defense mission, but a rather special request. They want him to distribute his created weapons to the residents. According to them, he uses a rather unique weapon. Heine excitedly said it was called a firearm, and he remarked that he had never heard of such a thing. MC clarified, "So he just needs to distribute the weapons to him?" He confirmed this, and the mission location is Biennale. Naoki asked in surprise, "Isn't it a frontline town constantly at war with the Demon Lord's army?" Flynn confirmed this and added, "Therefore the client, Lady Olivia, wants her residents to also fight using the weapons he created. As he said, this is not an ordinary defense mission. If he doesn't want to, he can refuse." What will he do? Alan replied that of course he would take it on. For him, the opportunity to distribute the weapons he created is a real blessing. He will be able to naturally distribute the weapons and level up effectively. Flynn said that he would convey his answer to them, and since the probationary period was over, could he consider himself officially joining them? MC agreed without hesitation, but then it all seemed strange to him. A personal request for someone who had just started the probationary period. Flynn said that the 3 of them would then go to Biennale tomorrow morning. The client would cover the teleportation costs, so they shouldn't worry. Alan said he could go alone. He'd just hand out weapons there, but the clan master reminded him of the rules. They had to work in teams of 3. Heine hugged Alan's hand and invited him to walk around the city together after the mission, and he told her to choose Naoki instead, but she didn't want to, and even said she was tired of looking at his face. Naoki was very upset, and Flynn said that she should learn to be more considerate of others. He said goodbye to the 3 of them. Heine pulled Alan towards the exit, but before leaving, he asked the clan master a question. How does the client know he joined this clan, especially considering he was only on probation? He replied that she probably checked the clan member list. The membership list is updated in real time. Since the probation period is just a verbal agreement, he doubts she even knows about it. MC asked, "Then how does the lord of the frontline city know who he is?" The man replied that he doesn't know. Shouldn't he ask Lady Olivia about this? Not him. Is there a problem? Alan replied that he was just a little curious about how information about a level 28 artisan could spread so far incredibly quickly. Flynn laughed and noted that it was indeed strange. If he was dissatisfied, he could refuse the request. He replied that he would do it and do everything perfectly. When they left the headquarters, Heine worriedly asked what he was thinking, and he simply told her that everything was fine. Receiving a personal request less than half a day after joining is extremely suspicious. Could Flynn also be part of the Demon Lord's legacy faction that opposes defeating him? They set out for the frontline town in high spirits that morning, but the deeper they went, the more their spirits changed. There were almost no people, and the shops were closed. Even the soldiers looked completely exhausted. The situation here was clearly dire. They reached the town gates when soldiers suddenly called out to them, warning of danger behind them. They were completely unaware that a giant level 55 lizard, the local boss, had approached them. Heine became worried. She had no idea how a monster of such a level had gotten here, and one of the soldiers exclaimed that things were bad. It was coming. The giant lizard charged, and the 2 managed to jump aside. MC leaped high into the air and created a rocket launcher, then said, Attacking someone just as they're teleporting is a breach of etiquette. He then fired, causing a powerful explosion that destroyed the lizard. Heine's feelings for Alan deepened, and the soldiers were shocked that they'd killed the monster with one blow. Heine began praising the newcomer, and a soldier suddenly exclaimed that it wasn't over yet. Level 40 monsters, a cross between an eagle and an ostrich, ran out of the flames toward them. MC glanced at them and thought, so these are reinforcements. Then a loud cry came from the side, and a man on horseback charged into the enemy line, swung his axe and quickly dispatched each monster. After that, he approached Alan and asked, "Is that artisan, isn't he?" He confirmed this, and the man introduced himself. His name was Gordo, the captain of the Royal Guard. He had come to meet Alan and his group under orders from Her Grace, Lady Olivia. MC wanted to check his level, but his status was hidden. Gordo pointed to a carriage near the gate and told them to board. Seeing such a luxurious vehicle, Nyoki and Heine were delighted. They had never ridden in one. Alan remarked that this was quite a luxurious reception for a low-level artisan, and Heine exclaimed that this only showed how much was expected of him. Gordo confirmed this. Due to the protracted war with the Demon Lord's army, the city's finances were on the brink of collapse. However, if they had a weapon created by an artisan, they might be able to break through the current stagnation. This was precisely what Lady Olivia was hoping for. MC turned around and walked toward the carriage, saying, then he would have to live up to those expectations. But he still couldn't calm down the Demon Lord's legacy faction that was hunting him. Where were they hiding? Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild headquarters in the meeting room, the guild leader, ZYNYRD, was now reading the report. 5 assassins were dispatched. Alan counterattacked and won in the wasteland. The defense clan Holy Guardians seemed to be heading for Byandal. They were currently tracking the target's movements. The man thought, so Byandal this time? That city was too far away. Their surveillance couldn't reach it. He could create an unknown weapon, a firearm. The one and only craftsman, Alan, must act while he still can. In the future, he will undoubtedly become an obstacle for them. Hiroshi, the #1 level 175 craftsman in the kingdom, peeked into the meeting room. He entered the room with a laugh and apologized to the leader for keeping him waiting. Zedwanu was overjoyed to see him and asked who the girl next to him was. She didn't look like the legendary blacksmith, Benjamin. She introduced herself to him. Her name was Annette, Benjamin's daughter. This girl was a level 13 blacksmith. Zedwanu dubiously inquired if everything would be all right, and she winked at him, telling him to leave the structural analysis to her. In terms of knowledge alone, she was far superior to her father. Zedwanu didn't argue since Benjamin was vouching for her, and suggested they begin the meeting immediately. He showed them the firearm and said he wanted the two of them to analyze it, or rather its structure. Annette immediately noticed the weapon's odd shape, and Hiroshi grinned and said he'd seen it on the recording, but the real thing looked different than he imagined. He awkwardly picked up the assault rifle, trying to figure out how to hold it properly, and ZYNYRD explained that it operated like a crossbow. You pull the trigger and fire. Hiroshi decided to try it on a nearby statue. He pulled the trigger, and the stone statue shattered into splinters, which made him nervous. He hadn't expected such a rapid fire rate. Annette was also surprised that it was possible to fire with 55 attack power at such a speed. The level of the craftsman who created this must be insane. Hiroshi placed the weapon on the table and shrugged. Even he, at his level, couldn't have created something like this. Zedwenwei told them that the craftsman who created it was only level 15 back then. They were both very surprised, and he said it was hard to believe, but it was a fact. That's why he's entrusting this task to them. Let them carefully analyze this weapon and create a copy. Even if the stats are worse, it's enough to understand the structure. Annette took the rifle and said that the base attack power of the created weapon depends on the craftsman's level. If Hiroshi creates a copy, they can expect an attack power more than 10 times higher than this weapon. Hiroshi confirmed this, and the guild leader laughed contentedly. It seemed it would truly be worth his effort. He will organize an army of artisans capable of producing firearms, and as for Alan, he will simply kill him. Meanwhile, he arrived at the city lord's estate, and the three of them were immediately brought to the audience hall to Lady Olivia. She thanked them for coming such a long way to meet her. She is Olivia, the ruler of this territory. MC responded that he was glad to meet her. He thanks her for finding the time to meet them. Since he spoke to her in an informal tone, Heine became worried and reminded him of his manners. But Olivia said that everything was fine. He noticed her generosity and asked where he should start distributing weapons. She said that the plan was to distribute them to the residents. But before that, she would like him to tell her more about this firearm. As a ruler, she must check how to handle it, its characteristics and safety. He just created an assault rifle, and the soldiers were surprised. Now they could see this firearm with their own eyes. Suddenly, Alan raised the rifle at Olivia. Gordo immediately stood in front of her to protect her, but MC quickly turned to Naoki and said that there are different types, but the basics are the same. First, you need to take this stance and then just pull the trigger. He opened fire on Naoki. The poor guy was very scared, but the bullets did not hurt him at all. And he exclaimed, "Why is he even shooting at him?" He told him that it was easy to aim, that he just couldn't resist. He set a limit so that it does 0 damage, so everything is fine. Naoki indignantly exclaimed that that was not the case at all, and Lady Olivia applauded and said with a smile that it was magnificent. With such a weapon, even the villagers will be able to fight. If they focus on shooting from the walls, the risk will be minimal, which should significantly ease the burden on their soldiers. Heine hesitantly called out to the lady and asked if she could ask a question. Why did she want the villagers to participate in the war? Olivia clarified what she meant, and with an awkward, nervous smile, she said she simply thought that with such weapons, the defense clan soldiers should be more than sufficient. She replied that the problem was the cost of maintaining these defense clans. Although they received subsidies from the royal palace, under the current circumstances, it was completely insufficient. The Demon Lord's army invades at most a few times a month, but they must be constantly prepared. Because of this, many defense clans are permanently stationed here, resulting in enormous expenses and a drain on the city's finances. Heine didn't quite understand what she said, and Alan explained it more simply. It meant they were running out of money because they had hired too many clans. Olivia said that with these firearms, they would be able to drastically reduce maintenance costs. It pains her to involve the villagers in a war, but restoring their economy is an urgent task. Heine didn't understand again, and Alan explained to her again. It means the task is urgent and important. She looked at him with admiration and said that he was so smart, and he asked her not to be impressed by such simple things, and then turned to Naoki and asked if he even knew what this was. It was clear from the guy's stupid face that he didn't understand anything either, and MC suggested that they end this discussion and get down to business. He can only create 99 weapons at a time, so he wants to start as soon as possible. Olivia agreed. They prepared a distribution point in the central square, so let him head there. Before leaving, he decided to give her the weapon he had just made. As he showed earlier, he placed restrictions so that it would not harm people. She could shoot as much as she wanted without worrying about it. She thanked him for the gift and said that she was counting on him. The soldier led them to the square, and Olivia examined the stats of the assault rifle and asked Gordo what he thought of the weapon. He told her that the stats were hard to believe. He couldn't even imagine that a level 28 craftsman had created it. What secret technique did he use? Lady Olivia smiled. No wonder the guild leaders were making such a fuss. Gordo agreed with her. The attack power of a crafted weapon depends heavily on the craftsman's stats. What they call base attack power plays a huge role. However, his level is extremely low, only 28, and he doesn't even wear accessories. Olivia glanced at him and said she was curious about something. Could Alan become the chosen one to defeat the Demon Lord? The man told her that the probability was high, and she smiled contentedly, meaning she had made the right choice in inviting him here. Meanwhile, Alan began working, creating weapons, and the soldiers distributed them to the villagers. One of them, a skeptical old man, picked up a flare gun and asked if such a pipe-like thing could really be a weapon. The stats were amazing, but he was worried about whether he'd even be able to use it. Time passed, and MC went to lunch, but even while eating, he didn't stop working. Naoki noted that he was quite skilled, since he could do this even while eating, and he replied that this wasn't the first time he'd handed out crafted weapons. Heine asked why he didn't wear accessories. If he enhanced himself with accessories, the attack power of the weapons he created would also increase dramatically. He agreed, and Naoki said that his firepower was already insane, so he probably didn't even need them. There hadn't been a situation where they'd needed them yet. He gulped down a glass of beer and exclaimed that he envied him so much. An insanely strong craftsman like him couldn't even afford to think about equipment. Heine agreed with him. When you're as strong as Alan, accessories are simply unnecessary. Seeing how close she was to him, Naoki was indignant, and the MC told them that wasn't quite true. He didn't need accessories that boosted his attack, but defensive ones that neutralize status ailments or elemental attacks would be useful. Unlike in the game, if he died here, he died permanently. Perhaps he should start figuring out armor and accessories soon. Suddenly, A roar was heard, and a soldier ran into the tavern and informed them of an enemy attack. The two men's faces immediately turned fearful, but Alan remained calm. The demon lord's massive army was already at the city walls. Before they could begin their attack, all the villagers quickly gathered on the wall, and the MC began giving instructions. One of the adventurers standing nearby asked why there were civilians there, and her friend told them to look at them. They were holding something strange. Alan explained to the townspeople how to use the flare gun, and Haina and Naoki were in great anticipation, so happy that they would finally be able to shoot it because of it. MC told them, "Just don't drop it," and the adventurer M noted with a smirk that they were indeed excited. She wondered what kind of pathetic clan they were from. Seeing that the three of them were from the Holy Guardian clan, she was very surprised and exclaimed, "Isn't that a super large clan?" Her friend said that even if it was a large clan, the members were all of different levels. If they were sent to such a remote place, they must be some kind of scum. Spearmen are okay, but this craftsman is annoying him. He's only level 28. Alan finished his briefing at this point. He turned to the demon lord's army and thought, is this just the remnants? There were an incredible number of them, apparently around level 50. The soldier captain raised his sword and warned everyone the remnants of the demon lord's army were approaching, and they should prepare long-range attacks and take positions. The civilians prepared themselves, as did the adventurers. As soon as the captain gave the order, they opened fire. Numerous missiles flew into the thick of the demon lord's army, and a huge wall of flame rose into the sky. Naoki cleared his throat and exclaimed that this explosion was so incredible, and Alan's level immediately increased to 30. When the smoke cleared, the soldier captain was shocked by what he saw. Half the enemies were destroyed in an instant. After this shot, the reloading began. The civilians worried that they wouldn't be able to use their missile launchers again, and MC told them to just wait a second. The reload was complete, he warned, and they immediately opened fire, smiling as they said there was nothing to fear with this weapon. It was so satisfying to see enemies being blown away at once. Watching the incessant explosions, the adventurers were amazed. They had never seen anything like it. The soldier captain even became nervous. He knew the power of the weapon he had created was immense, but just imagine, when used by a large group, the clearing power was so great. Alan approached him, warning that the enemies who had escaped the attack were approaching, and that his orders were needed. The man glanced down. Some demons had already begun to dismantle the walls, and he ordered the villagers to retreat. They could handle the rest. He ordered the archers to prepare, after which they opened fire, while the hired adventurers simply sat idle. The man somewhat disappointedly noted that their turn would not come, and his friends said, apparently, the artisan from a large clan is completely different. After a while, the soldier captain victoriously punched the air and exclaimed that the remnants of the demon lord's army had been destroyed. The battle had ended without casualties, a historic triumph. A joyful roar was heard from the city walls, and everyone immediately rushed to praise and thank Alan for his help, because thanks to him, the battle was over in the blink of an eye. Now he was a hero. Haina approached him and asked if something was wrong. He didn't look happy at all. He told her that he had missed a rare chance to level up, and she asked in confusion, hadn't he leveled up to 30? He had leveled up during this battle. He replied that given his level and the number of enemies, he should have leveled up at least 10 levels, if not for the restrictions. She understood what he was talking about. The novice trial. When an adventurer reaches level 30, they can take the novice trial at the Royal Capital Adventurers Guild. The system is designed so that you cannot raise your level above 30 until you pass this trial. Barring this event, the opportunity to destroy a huge number of enemies at once will most likely not appear again. If the attack of the remnants of the Demon Lord's army had happened just a few days later, he would have raised his level even more. Lady Olivia climbed the city walls and applauded Alan, praising him for his excellent work. The adventurers were already starting to drool over her. One of them said that this woman was truly beautiful, and his comrade called him an idiot, which she could hear. Olivia looked at the battlefield and said that she was about to see the power of firearms with her own eyes, but was shocked when she heard that the battle was already over. Besides, the weapons he gives out are different from the ones she received, right? He replied that, given the situation, he specialized the weapons for area attacks. Was that a mistake? She replied that it was not so at all. Thanks to him, defense by the citizens became possible. So, from now on, they will be terminating contracts with all defense clans except the Holy Guardians. The adventurers' faces immediately turned worried, and she added, As for the Holy Guardians, they will triple their contract fee as payment for using the created weapons. Naoki and Hina were very happy and began praising Alan, and one of the adventurers went to the lady to voice his complaints. Isn't terminating contracts with them too much? If she does this to them, small clans like theirs won't be able to survive. She asked coldly, what does this have to do with this city? They sacrificed a lot to maintain contracts with the defense clans, and if they are no longer needed, terminating the contract is only natural. The townspeople agreed with her. They were barely making ends meet due to the costs of maintaining them. The only reason they had to fight themselves was because they were useless. They started calling them tax thieves and ordering them to leave the city, and so on. Olivia raised her hand and everyone fell silent. She said that she couldn't say they didn't feel any guilt, so as a small apology, they would pay their teleportation costs. She thanked them all for their service, and that adventurer's face darkened. He became very nervous. Hina worriedly asked, did they just take their colleagues' jobs? Naoki confirmed it, and Olivia asked them, they have nothing to worry about, right? It's true that because of Alan, other clans lost contracts, but thanks to him, all the residents of this city have found peace. Just look at their faces. They brought smiles back to this city, so they should be proud of that. Let them continue like this and bring smiles to all the cities, fighting against the remnants of the Demon Lord's army. Her words encouraged them, and that guy heard her and thought, if Alan spreads the weapon he created to other cities, then they really will be out of work. MC suggested they resume distributing weapons quickly. He wanted to return to the royal capital as soon as possible and pass the rookie test. The boy understood that this was all his fault, and dark thoughts took over his head. He ran up to him and asked, do you have a minute? That weapon looked like a pipe. He wanted to take a look at it. Alan turned to him, and at that very moment, he smirked and pushed him off the wall, causing everyone else's hearts to stop for a moment. The adventurer ran to the edge and looked down, watching him fall. From such a height, he would die instantly. He was a pathetic craftsman after all, so there was nothing he could do. It would be a problem if the weaponry started spreading to other cities, so let him just fall and die. MC was very scared. His comrades called out to him worriedly, telling him to do something. He turned to the ground, grabbed the flare gun, and fired, thinking that he wouldn't die in a place like this. As soon as the explosion occurred, he was thrown back by the shockwave, and everyone was surprised at how deftly he got out of the situation. He hit the wall and slid down it, which is why he didn't die. His comrades immediately ran to him, asking if he was okay, and he told them that he would live. The shockwave softened the impact of the fall, but he didn't want to repeat it again. They again didn't understand what he was talking about, and the guy whispered in shock, is this a joke? Is that even possible? Hina gave Alan a healing potion. He drank it, and then looked up at the guy with a displeased look, which made him very scared. He quickly created a trampoline, jump high, and returned to the wall, and the adventurers thought he created a platform and launched himself like a projectile. He can do that too. MC took out a gun and asked, so someone like him is also a member of a Demon Lord's legacy faction? The guy immediately fell on his knees in front of him and began to beg him for mercy, justifying himself with a moment of madness. He pointed the gun at him and coldly asked why he should spare him. Olivia asked him to stop, and he threw her a displeased look, asking why she was doing this. She warned him that if he killed him, he would be held accountable, to which he replied, this idiot tried to kill him, so it was self-defense. She shook her head. No, this will not relieve him of the murder charge. Besides, she does not want to tarnish this historical feat of victory without a single casualty. He did not argue with her, picked up the gun and left. The guy breathed a sigh of relief, but Alan decided to take revenge on him in a different way. He created a catapult beneath him, and then launched him into the air, which even surprised Olivia. He noted that it was just a prototype. Although the power was weak, he had room for improvement. Meanwhile, the guy fell from the wall with a piercing scream. A large pillow appeared under him, and he landed head-on in it. Having caught his breath, he lay down trying to recover, and MC threatened him. He got off with a slight fright. Next time, he would bury him on the spot. He knelt before him again, and tearfully apologized. After which, Alan began to climb down the wall and thought, it's difficult to defend against people who attack impulsively, even if they distribute weapons. He needs to think about how to do it without provoking the others. The next day, they had already decided to return to the city, since they had finished distributing weapons. Upon returning, MC immediately decided to take the rookie exam at the Adventurers Guild and ask his comrades to report everything to the master. Naoki exclaimed, what is he even talking about? It was his achievement, so he should report himself. Hina agreed with him. He would also be praised and given a bonus. He replied that he would prefer only experience, not a bonus. Someone asked them to wait. It was Gordo. They immediately told him that they finished distributing weapons yesterday, but he came for a different reason. In fact, he wanted to ask for their help in hunting bandits. There is a large bandit lair in the forest outside, and like the Demon Lord's army, they pose a threat to this city. They would be very grateful if Alan loaned them his power. Hina asked, "Isn't it dangerous, considering all the monsters around?" Naoki said, "They must be idiots," and Gordo promised them the highest possible reward if they agreed to help. MC immediately refused, not interested in money or goods, and besides, he wanted to return to the capital as soon as possible and pass the rookie exam. He apologized and continued toward the portal, but the man excitedly asked him to wait and asked if he would pay him with information. He stopped immediately, clearly interested, and Gordo clarified that he would pay him with information on the supporters of the Demon Lord Legacy faction that was hunting him. According to information he received from a certain source, they had already infiltrated his inner circle. Hina and Naoki exchanged suspicious glances, and Alan remarked, if he helped, he would reveal which of his entourage were members of the faction. The guard captain said that normally he would have told him all this without conditions, but it was his duty to ensure that Lady Olivia's orders were carried out flawlessly. MC thought, above all, fighting the Demon Lord Legacy faction is the top priority. If they can eliminate even one of them, that in itself should be a deterrent. He agreed to take on the task for such a reward, and asked why he was asking him for help. Isn't hunting bandits a job for soldiers? He answered that Lady Olivia had decided to ask him for this. He didn't ask the reason, but he assumed it was because she valued him highly. Naoki asked with a smile, so that means he's now the city's ruler's favorite. Hina exclaimed that she wouldn't lose even to the ruler, and Alan thought about their words. Gordo said that he would also accompany him this time, so they would defeat the bandits together. MC told the two to return first and report everything to Master Flynn. Of course, they didn't do that. They could actually fight too, and Alan said it was a personal request, so he could handle it alone. Gordo also added that Alan and he were more than enough for this mission, so they could safely return to the capital. Naoki patted Alan on the shoulder and said that according to clan rules, they acted in teams of 3, and they definitely wouldn't interfere with them. Gordo didn't object and led them to the city gates. As they walked, MC turned around and noticed that the atmosphere in the city had clearly improved compared to their first visit. The people here are all friendly, but it seems Olivia is in the Demon Lord Legacy faction. Although she only saw weapons that don't work on humans, as soon as he raised his gun, she called it murder. She knows that unlimited firearms can kill, and only a few know that. Even if this bandit lair is a trap, there's nothing to be done. He needs to get rid of this problem quickly. Gordo led them into the forest and said that there was a group of bandits deep there, and they would go straight there. Naoki told Alan to leave the forest monsters to him and Hina. They could definitely defeat the enemies in this forest themselves, but MC said there was no need to even enter the forest. They would massacre them right from here. He took a drone out of his inventory. Gordo was very surprised and asked what kind of iron thing it was. He answered that it was called a drone, and if he gave the order, it would automatically find and kill the bandits hiding in the forest. His comrades were very surprised. They hadn't even imagined that he could create such a thing. He lifted the drone into the air and said that it was faster and safer than going there themselves. This way, the bandits hiding in the forest would be quickly destroyed. Hearing this, Gordo became worried and asked him to wait. He was against this method. If there were hostages there, the drone would kill them too. He told him that he would simply order the drone to kill only those holding weapons that would solve the problem. But Gordo refused again, and when he asked about the reason, he said, even if this drone killed only bandits, there was a chance that the hostages would die in the crossfire, and he wanted to ensure absolute safety. Alan smirked faintly, and that's when the hostages suddenly appeared. He said that in that case, let him go into the forest alone, and he would support him with the drone. Since he was only a level 30 craftsman, he didn't have to be there in person, right? Gordo became very agitated and exclaimed that this was impossible. It would be against Lady Olivia's orders. MC realized that he wanted to lure him into the forest at all costs. He decided to play along and said that since it would be against orders, there was nothing to be done. They would go straight to that bandit lair or whatever it was. Now it was absolutely clear to him that Gordo's goal was his life. They continued on. All the while, Hina and Naoki were looking around for monsters, but they were nowhere to be found. The guy asked, isn't it good that there aren't any? Suddenly, Alan put his hands on their shoulders and told them to stop. There was a trap ahead. A rope was stretched in front of them, and a sharpened tree trunk hung from above. MC remarked that the trap was so sloppy. The bandits must have set it. Naoki repeated him with admiration, and Alan said, if he doesn't understand, he shouldn't even try to pretend. The guy jumped back and excitedly exclaimed, what are they supposed to do about this now? It's dangerous. MC told them not to move recklessly. There was a limit to the traps that could be made with the technology of this world. They just needed to stay calm and figure it out. He cut the rope with scissors. The sharp tree trunk immediately stuck into the ground, and Alan continued on, saying that he could handle even mines. As always, they both didn't understand what he was talking about, and Gordo gritted his teeth with displeasure. He clearly hoped to fall into this trap, and so they reached the bandit group's lair, which looked more like an ordinary village. Hina and Naoki noticed that there were so many of them. At least 100. Would they be able to defeat so many bandits with such numbers? MC glanced at Gordo, noticing how he was barely moving his fingers, and there was a ring on one of them. He told his comrades that they would follow the captain from now on. It seemed he had some kind of plan. Gordo frowned and thought, did he really notice it? But it didn't matter anymore. Since they had come this far, the advantage was clearly on his side. The girl worriedly asked him what they would do next, and he, drawing his axe, answered that they would first offer to surrender. There was nothing better than avoiding an unnecessary battle. She agreed with him, but Alan remained silent, and the man told them to follow him. They approached the bandits' lair. They were met even without weapons, and Naoki asked doubtfully, would they really approach them so openly? Aren't they revealing themselves too much? Gordo approached the main house and ordered the bandit boss to leave. The captain of the royal guard arrived. A man peeked out of the house, grinning, saying that he was already tired of waiting for him. He was so late that he had already decided that he had fallen into a trap and died. Who was with him? Did he bring his comrades with him? After all, they had agreed that he would be alone. Gordo smirked and replied that some idiots had followed him, even though he had ordered them to stop. Let him ignore them. He can kill them. Hina and Naoki didn't understand what was going on. Was he really in league with the bandits? MC smirked, because everything was going exactly as he expected. The bandit called the captain boss and asked for extra pay for killing them, but he immediately told him not to get cocky. His gaze fell on Hina. He began to drool over her and remarked that she was quite beautiful. Could they keep her? Gordo immediately refused, saying they had to consider all possibilities and definitely kill her. The bandits drew their weapons and began to surround them, saying that they could have some fun with her before killing her. Naoki indignantly called out to the captain and asked what all this meant. MC held out his hand in front of him so that he wouldn't do anything unnecessary and told him that he was their enemy and his goal was to kill him. They, confused, asked why he even wanted to kill him, and he suggested that he was in his way because he was part of the Demon Lord's legacy faction. Hina became nervous, and the bandit turned to the boss with a smirk and said that he had been completely exposed. He responded by asking, so what? Whether he knew or not, it didn't change the fact that he was going to die here. The bandit laughed, not doubting it. They were still overwhelming them with numbers and levels. They were all between 50 and 80. Hina finally realized what was happening and asked, so the one Gordo was talking about, the Demon Lord legacy member next to them, was he himself? Alan confirmed it. He lured them here to make it look like a bandit group's work. Gordo remarked that he had understood correctly. He had understood so much, but still fallen into a trap. MC didn't even let him finish, shooting him in the head, causing the bandits to panic for a moment, then asking, did he interrupt him? But it had no effect on Gordo. The bullet simply crumpled against his forehead, and he exclaimed with a smile that none of it mattered anymore. The conversation was over anyway. Naoki and Hina were shocked that Alan's attack didn't work, and Gordo said not only would Alan's attacks fail, but none of their attacks would work on him. It was all because of his absolute barrier ring, which nullifies attacks from targets 50 levels or more lower than its owner. His level 125, so the chances of them defeating him are 0.